This audio presentation of Believe in Yourself by Joseph Murphy is brought to you by AudioEnlightenment.com. Copyright 2014, all rights reserved. This book teaches you how to transform your life through the art of believing. Each chapter is full of powerful, practical psychology showing you why man is belief expressed. Publisher's Preface. The story of Joseph will live forever. Joseph is divine imagination. Dr. Murphy shows you the science of imagination in a vivid, intensely practical way. The how is portrayed through many case histories, and you learn to use the two great pillars of truth, disciplined imagination plus faith, enabling you to realize your fondest dreams. Here is the book that shows you how to believe and succeed. The greatest and richest galleries of art in the world are the galleries of the mind devoted to God's truth and beauty. Dr. Murphy gives you in this book a universal guide in the art of making your life much more effective and satisfying by developing belief in yourself. The magic formula is, all things are possible to him that believeth. You want freedom, health, and happiness. You can have them by changing your conscious belief to subconscious belief. Chapter 1. Make your dreams come true. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him all the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to them, Shall thou indeed reign over us? Or shall thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dream and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and his brethren. And his father rebuked him, and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down to thee on earth? Genesis 37, 3-10. Joseph in the Bible means disciplined or controlled imagination. It is one of the primal faculties of mind, and has the power to project and clothe your ideas, giving them visibility on the screen of space. Israel loved Joseph. Israel is the spiritually awakened man who knows the power of controlled imagination. It is called the son of his old age. Son means expression. Old age infers wisdom and knowledge in the laws of mind. When you become familiar with the power of imagination, you will call it the son of your old age. Age is not the flight of years. It is really the dawn of wisdom and divine knowledge in you. Imagination is the mighty instrument used by great scientists, artists, physicists, inventors, architects, and mystics. When the world said it is impossible, it can't be done, the man with imagination said, It is done. Through your imagination, you can also penetrate the depths of reality and reveal the secrets of nature. A great industrialist told me one time how he started in a small store. He said that I used to dream, and remember, Joseph was a dreamer, of a large corporation with branches all over the country. He added that regularly and systematically he pictured in his mind the giant building, offices, factories, and stores, knowing that through the alchemy of the mind he would weave the fabric out of which his dreams would be clothed. He prospered and began to attract to himself, by a universal law of attraction, the ideas, personnel, friends, money, and everything needed for the unfoldment of his ideal. He truly exercised and cultivated his imagination and lived with these mental patterns in his mind until imagination clothed them in form. I like particularly one comment which he made as follows, It is just as easy to imagine yourself successful as it is to imagine yourself failure, and far more interesting. Joseph is a dreamer and a dreamer of dreams. This means he has visions, images, and ideals in his mind, and knows that there is a creative power which responds to his mental pictures. The mental images we hold are developed in feeling. It is wisely said that all our senses are modification of the one sense feeling. Troward said, Feeling is the law, and the law is the feeling. Feeling is the fountainhead of power. We must charge our mental pictures with feeling in order to get results. We are told Joseph dreamed a dream and told it to his brethren, and they hated him. Perhaps as you read this, you have a dream, an ideal, a plan, or a purpose that you would like to accomplish. To hate is to reject in Bible language. The thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and opinions in your mind are your brethren which challenge you, belittle your dreams, and say to you, "You can't, it is impossible, forget about it." Perhaps other thoughts come into your mind which scoff at your plan or ambition. You discover there's a quarrel in your mind with your own brethren. Opposition sets in. The way to handle the opposition in your mind is to detach your attention from sense evidence and appearance of things, and to begin to think clearly and with interest about your goal or objective. When your mind is engaged on your goal or objective, you are using the creative law of mind, and it will come to pass. Lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood around about it, and made obeisance to my sheaf. Lift your ideal or desire up in consciousness. Exalt it. Commit yourself wholeheartedly to it. Praise it. Give your attention, love, and devotion to your ideal, and as you continue to do this, all the fearful thoughts will make obeisance to your exalted state of mind. That is, they will lose their power and disappear from the mind. Through your faculty to imagine the end result, you have control over any circumstance or condition. If you wish to bring about the realization of any wish, desire, or idea, form a mental picture of fulfillment in your mind. Constantly imagine the reality of your desire. In this way, you will actually compel it into being. What you imagine as true already exists in the next dimension of mind, and if you remain faithful to your ideal, it will one day objectify itself. The master architect within you will project on the screen of visibility what you impress on your mind. Joseph, or imagination, wears a coat of many colors. A coat in the Bible is a psychological covering. Your psychological garments are the mental attitudes, moods, and feelings you entertain. The coat of many colors represents the many facets of the diamond, or your capacity to clothe any idea and form. You can imagine your friend who is poor living in the lap of luxury. You can see his face light up with joy, see his expression change, and a broad smile cross his lips. You can hear him tell you what you want to hear. You can see him exactly as you wish to see him. That is, he is radiant, happy, prosperous, and successful. Your imagination is the coat of many colors. It can clothe and objectify any idea or desire. You can imagine abundance where lack is, peace where discord is, health where sickness is. His brethren said to him, "Shalt thou indeed reign over us?" Imagination is the first faculty and takes precedence over all the other powers or elements of consciousness. You have 12 faculties or brethren, but your imagination, when disciplined, enables you to collapse time and space and rise above all limitation. When you keep your imagination busy with noble, godlike concepts and ideas, you will find it the most effective of all faculties in your spiritual ongoing. The phrase, "Joseph is sold unto Egypt," means that your concept or desire must be subjectified, Egypt, first before it becomes objectified. Every concept must go down in Egypt, meaning into the subjective where the birth of ideas takes place. Out of Egypt have I called my son. Joseph is commander of Egypt, which tells you that imagination controls the whole conceptive realm. Whatever prison you may be in, whether it is the prison of fear, sickness, lack, or imagination of any kind, remember that Joseph is the commander in prison and can deliver you. You can imagine your freedom and continue to do so until it is subjectified. Then, after gestation and the darkness the manifestation comes, your prayer is answered. Consider for a moment in a distinguished, talented architect. He can build a beautiful, modern, 20th century city in his mind, complete with superhighways, swimming pools, aquariums, parks, etc. He can construct in his mind the most beautiful palace the eye has ever seen. He can see the buildings in its entirety completely erected before he ever gives his plan to the builders. Where was the building? It was in his imagination. With your imagination, you can actually hear the invisible voice of your mother, even though she lives 10,000 miles from here. You can also see her clearly and as vividly as if she were present. This is the wonderful power you possess. You can develop and cultivate this power and become successful and prosperous. Haven't you heard the sales manager say, "I have to let John go because his attitude is wrong"? The business world knows the importance of right attitude. I remember many years ago having printed a small article on reincarnation. The pamphlets were on display on a book counter of the church where I lectured. In the beginning, very few of them were sold because a salesgirl was violently opposed to its content. I explained to her the biblical meaning of reincarnation, the origin of the story, and what it was all about. She understood the contents of the drama and became enthusiastic about the booklets. They were all sold before my lecture series was completed. This was an instance of the importance of the right mental attitude. Your mental attitude means your mental reaction to people, circumstance, conditions, and objects in space. What is your relationship with your coworker? Are you friendly with people, with animals, and with the universe in general? Do you think the universe is hostile and that the world owes you a living? In short, what is your attitude? The emotional reaction of the above-mentioned girl was one of deep-seated prejudice. That was the wrong attitude in selling books. She was biased towards the book and the writer. You can develop the right mental attitude when you realize that nothing externally can upset you or hurt you without your mental consent. You are the only thinker in your world. Consequently, nothing can move you to anger, grief, or sorrow without your mental consent. The suggestions that come to you from the outside world have no power whatsoever, except that you permit them to move in thought negatively. Realize you are master of your thought world. Emotions follow thought. Hence, you are supreme in your own orbit. Do you permit others to influence you? Do you allow the headlines in the newspaper or the gossip or criticism of others to upset you or bring about mental depression? If you do, you must admit you are the cause of your own mood. You created your emotional reaction. Your attitude is wrong. Do you imagine evil of others? If you do, notice the emotion generated in your deeper self. It is negative and destructive to your health and prosperity. Circumstances can affect you only as you permit them. You can voluntarily and definitely change your attitude toward life and all things. You can become master of your fate and captain of your soul or subconscious mind. Through disciplined, directed, and controlled imagination, you can dominate and master your emotions and mental attitude in general. If you imagine, for example, that the other is mean, dishonest, and jealous, notice the emotion you evoked within yourself. Now reverse the situation. Begin to imagine the same boy or girl as honest, sincere, loving, and kind. Notice the reaction it calls forth in you. Are you not, therefore, master of your attitudes? In reality, the truth of the whole matter is that it is your real concept of God which determines your whole attitude toward life in general. Your dominant idea about God is your idea of life, for God is life. If you have the dominant idea or attitude that God is the spiritual power within you responsive to your thought, and that therefore, since your habitual thinking is constructive and harmonious, this power is guiding and prospering you in all ways, this dominant attitude will color everything. You will be looking at the world through the positive, affirmative attitude of mind. Your outlook will be positive, and you will have a joyous expectancy of the best. Many people have a gloomy, despondent outlook on life. They are sour, cynical, and cantankerous. This is due to the dominant mental attitude which directs their reaction to everything. A person's mood of joy is usually short-lived who is constantly singing the blues when something wonderful comes into his experience or that of his family. A young boy of 16 years going to high school said to me, "I am getting very poor grades. My memory is failing. I do not know what is the matter." Well, the only thing wrong was his attitude. He adopted a new mental attitude by realizing how important his studies were in gaining entrance grades to college in order to become a lawyer. He began to pray scientifically, which is one of the quickest ways to change the mentality. In scientific prayer, we deal with a principle which responds to thought. The young man realized there was a spiritual power within him, and that it was the only cause and power. Furthermore, he began to claim that his memory was perfect, and that infinite intelligence constantly revealed to him everything he needed to know at all times everywhere. He began to radiate love and goodwill to the teachers and fellow students. This young man is now enjoying a greater freedom than he had known for several years. He constantly imagines the teachers and his mother congratulating him on all his A's. It is imagining the desired results that have followed his change of attitude towards his studies. We have said previously that all our mental attitudes are conditioned by imagination. If you imagine it is going to be a black day today, business is going to be very poor, that it is raining, or no customers will come into your store, they have no money, etc., you will experience the result of your negative imagery. One time Troward was walking the streets of London, and he imagined he saw a snake on the street. Fear caused him to become semi-paralyzed. When he looked like a snake, but Troward had the same mental and emotional reaction as if it were a snake. Imagine whatsoever things are lovely, noble, and of good report, and your entire emotional attitude towards life will change. What do you imagine about life? Is it going to be a happy life for you, or is it one long series of frustrations? Choose ye whom you will serve. You mold, fashion, and shape your outer world of experiences according to the mental images you habitually dwell on. Imagine conditions and circumstances in life which dignify, elevate, please, and satisfy. If you imagine life as cold, cruel, hard, bitter, and that struggle and pain are inevitable, you are making life miserable for yourself. Imagine yourself on the golf course. You are free, relaxed, full of enthusiasm and energy. Your joy is in overcoming all the difficulties presented by the golf course. The thrill is in surmounting all the obstacles. Now let us take this scene. Imagine yourself going into a funeral parlor. Notice a different emotional response brought forward as you picture yourself in each of the above-mentioned situations. In the funeral chapter, you can rejoice in the person's new birthday. You can imagine a loved one surrounded by his or her friends in the midst of indescribable beauty and love. You can imagine God's river of peace flooding the minds and hearts of all present. You can actually ascend the heavens of your own mind wherever you are. This is the power of your imagination. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. In ancient symbology, the sun and the moon represent the conscious and subconscious mind. The 11 stars represent the 11 powers in addition to imagination. Here again, the inspired writers are telling you that disciplined imagination takes precedence over all other faculties of the mind and controls the direction of the conscious and subconscious mind. Imagination is first and foremost. It can be scientifically directed. I was examining one of the round towers of Ireland with my father over 50 years ago. He said nothing for 1 hour, but remained passive and receptive, seeming to be in a pensive mood. I asked him what he was meditating on. This is the essence of his answer. He pointed out that it is not only by dwelling on the great, wonderful ideas of the world that we grow and expand. He contemplated the age of the stones in the tower. Then his imagination took him back to the quarries where stones were first formed. His imagination unclothed the stones. He saw with the interior eye the structure, the geological formation, the composition of the stone, and reduced it to the formless state. Finally, he imagined the oneness of the stones with all life. He realized in his divine imagery that it was possible to reconstruct the history of the Irish race from looking at the round tower. Through the imaginative faculty, this teacher was able to see the invisible men living in the tower and to hear their voices. The whole place became alive to him in his imagination. Through this power, he was able to go back in time when there was no round tower there. In his mind, he began to weave a drama of the place from which stones originated, which brought them the purpose of the structure and the history connected with it. As he said to me, I am able to almost feel the touch and hear the sound of steps that vanished thousands of years ago. The subjective mind permeates all things. It is in all things and is a substance from which they are made. The treasure house of eternity is in the very stone comprising a building. There is nothing inanimate. All is life in its varied manifestation. The sun and the moon make obeisance to Joseph, or imagination. Truly, through your faculty of imagination, you can imagine the invisible secrets of nature are revealed to you. You will find that you can plumb the very depths of consciousness, calling things that be not as though they were, and the unseen become seen. The other night I sat in a park and looked at the setting sun. Suddenly I began to think that the sun is like a house in the city of Los Angeles. There is a greater sun behind our sun, and so on to infinity. It staggers the imagination to ponder and meditate on the myriads of suns and solar galaxies extending into infinity beyond the Milky Way. This world is only a grain of sand in the infinite seashore. Instead of seeing the parts, let us look at the wholeness, the unity of all things. We are, as the poet said, all parts of one stupendous whole, whose body nature is, and God the soul. It is really out of the imaginative mind of men all religions are born. It is not out of the realm of imagination, television, radio, radar, superjets, and all other modern inventions came. Your imagination is a treasure house of infinity, which releases to all the precious gems of music, art, poetry, and inventions. You can look at some ancient ruin, an old temple or pyramid, and reconstruct the records of the dead past. In the ruins of an old churchyard, you can also see a modern city resurrected in all its beauty and glory. You may be in a prison of want, lack, or beyond stone bars, but in your imagination, you can find undreamed of measure of freedom. Remember how Chico, the Parisian sewer cleaner, imagined and lived in a paradisical state of mind called the seventh heaven, even though he never saw the light of day. Bunyan, in prison, wrote the great masterpiece, Pilgrim's Progress. Milton, through blind, saw the interior eye. His imagination made his brain a ball of fire, and he wrote Paradise Lost. In this way, he brought some of God's paradise to all men everywhere. Imagination was Milton's spiritual eye, which enabled him to go about God's business, whereby he annihilated time, space, and matter, and brought forth the truth of the invisible presence and power. A genius is a man who is in rapport with the subconscious mind. He is able to tap this universal reservoir and receive answers to his problems. Thus he does not have to work by the sweat of his brow. In the genius type of mind, the imaginative faculty is developed to a very high degree. All great poets and writers are gifted with a highly developed and cultivated imaginative faculty. I can now see Shakespeare listening to the old stories, fables, and myths of his day. I can also imagine him sitting down, listing all these characters in the play in his mind, then clothing them one by one with hair, skin, muscle, bone, animating them, and making them so much alive that we think we are reading about ourselves. Use your imagination and go about your Father's business. Your Father's business is to let your wisdom, skill, knowledge, and ability come forth, and bless others as well as yourself. You are about your Father's business if you are operating a small store, and in your imagination you feel you are operating a larger store, giving a greater measure of service to your fellow creature. If you are a writer of short stories, you can be about your Father's business. Create a story in your mind which teaches something about the Golden Rule, then pass that story and all its characters through your spiritualized and highly artistic mentality. Your article will be fascinating and intensely interesting to your public. The truth about man is always wonderful and beautiful. When writing a novel or story, we should be sure that we clothe truth in her garment of loveliness and beauty. You can now look at an acorn and with your imaginative eye construct a magnificent forest full of rivers, rivulets, and streams. You could people the forest with all kinds of life. Furthermore, you could hang a bow on every cloud. You could look at a desert and cause it to rejoice and blossom as a rose. Instead of the thorn shall come up the fir tree, and instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle tree. Men gifted with intuition and imagination find water in the desert, and they create cities where formerly other men only saw desert and wilderness. An architect of a city sees buildings and fountains already in operation before he ever digs a well or builds a house. I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land springs of water. Long hours, hard labor, or burning the minute oil will not produce a Milton, a Shakespeare, a Phidias, or a Beethoven. Men accomplish great things through quiet moments, imagining that the invisible things of him from the foundation of time are clearly visible. You can imagine the indescribable beauty of he who is being expressed on your canvas. And if you are a real artist in love with beauty, great beauty will come forth effortlessly. Moments of great inspiration will come to you. It will have nothing to do with perspiration or hard mental labor. In Greenwich Village, I met a poet who wrote beautiful poems. He had them printed on cards and sold them at Christmas time. Some of these poems were beautiful gems of spiritual love. He said when he got still, the words would come into his mind accompanied by a lovely scene. Flowers, people, and friends would come clearly into his mind. These images spoke to him. They told him their story. Oftentimes the complete poem, song, or lullaby would appear complete and ready in his mind without the slightest effort. His habit was to imagine he was writing beautiful poems which could stir the hearts of men. Shelley said poetry was an expression of the imagination. When the poet meditates on love and wishes to write on love, the invisible intelligence and wisdom within him stirs his mind, casts the spell of God's beauty over him, and awakens him to God's eternal love, so that his words become clothed with wisdom, truth, and beauty. The great musician is within. If it is your business to play music or compose music, be sure you are on your Father's business. Your Father's business is first of all to recognize God as the great musician. Then meditate, feel, pray, and know that the inner music sings or plays through you the song of God's love, and you will play like you never played before. Every invention of Edison's was first conceived in his imagination. The same was true of Tesla, another great inventor and scientist. I think it was Oliver Wendell Holmes who said we need 3 storymen who can idealize, imagine, and predict. I believe it was the capacity to imagine and dream that caused Ford to look forward to putting the world on wheels. Your capacity to imagine causes you and enables you to remove all barriers of time and space. You can reconstruct the past or contemplate the future through with your inner eye. No wonder it says in Genesis, Israel loved Joseph, or imagination, more than all his brethren. Imagination, when disciplined, spiritualized, controlled, and directed, becomes the most exalted and noblest attribute of man. I was in conversation some years ago with a young chemist who stated that his superiors for years had tried to manufacture a certain German dye and failed. He was given the assignment when he went with them. As he commented, he did not know it could not be done, and synthesized that compound without any difficulty. They were amazed and wanted to know his secret. His answer was that he imagined he had the answer. Pressed further by his superiors, he said that he could clearly see the letters "answer" in blazing red color in his mind. Then he created a vacuum underneath the letters, knowing that as he imagined the chemical formula underneath the letters, the subconscious would fill it in. The third night he had a dream, in which the complete formula and the technique of making the compound was clearly presented. Joseph, your imagination is a dreamer, and a dreamer of dreams. They conspired against him to slay him, and they said one to another, "Behold, this dreamer cometh." Perhaps as you read this biblical quotation, there are thoughts of fear, doubt, and anxiety conspiring in your own mind to slay or kill that desire, ideal or dream of yours. You look at conditions or circumstances and fear arises in your mind, yet there is a desire within you which, if realized, would bring you peace and solve your problem. You must be like Joseph and become a practical dreamer. Decide to make your dream come true. Withdraw and abstract your attention now from appearances of things and from sense evidence. Even though your senses deny what you pray for, affirm it as true in your heart. Bring your mind back from its wandering after the false gods of fear and doubt to rest in the omnipotence of the spiritual power within you. In the silence and quietude of your own mind, dwell on the fact that there is only one power and one presence. This power and presence is now responding to your thought as guidance, strength, peace, and nourishment for soul. Give all your mental attention to recognizing the absolute sovereignty of the spiritual power, knowing that the God power has the answer, and is now showing you the way. Trust it, believe in it, and walk the earth in the light your prayer is already answered. All of us read the story of Columbus and his discovery of America. It was imagination that led him to his discovery. His imagination plus faith in a divine power led him on and brought him to victory. The sailor said to Columbus, "What shall we do when all hope is gone?" His reply was, "You shall say at break of day, sail on and on." Here is the key to prayer. Be faithful to the end, full of faith every step of the way, persisting to the end, knowing in your heart that the end is secure, because you saw the end. Having seen and felt the end, as Troward said, you have willed the means to the realization of the end. Copernicus, through his vivid imagination, revealed how the earth revolved on its axis, causing the old astronomical theories to be cast in discard. I think it would be a wonderful idea if all of us from time to time recast our ideas, checked up on our beliefs and opinions, and asked ourselves honestly, why do I believe that? Where did that opinion come from? Perhaps many ideas, theories, beliefs, and opinions which we hold are completely erroneous and were accepted by us as true without any investigation whatever as to their truth or accuracy. Because our father and grandfather believed in a certain way is no reason why we should. One woman said to me that a certain idea she had must be true because her grandmother believed it. That is absurd. The race mind believes in many things which are not true. What came down from generation to generation is not necessarily valid or the final word on authority. The above-mentioned woman, who was honest and well-meaning, had a mind that was very touchy on psychological truth. She took everything in the Bible literally. This mind worked by prejudice, superstition, and opposed everything which was not in accord with our established beliefs, opinions, and preconceived notion. Our minds must be like a parachute. The ladder opens up. If it does not, it isn't any good. Likewise, we must open our eyes and minds to the new truth. We must hunger and thirst after new truth and new knowledge, enabling us to soar aloft above our problems on the wings of faith and understanding. The famous biologists, physicists, astronomers, and mathematicians of our day are men gifted with a vivid scientific imagination. For instance, the Einstein theory of relativity existed first in his imagination. Archaeologists and paleontologists studying the tombs of ancient Egypt through their imaginative perception reconstruct ancient scenes. The dead past becomes alive and audible once more. Looking at the ancient runes and the hieroglyphic therein, the scientist tells us an age when there was no language. Communication was done by grunts, groans, and signs. The scientist's imagination enables him to clothe this ancient temple with roofs and surround them with gardens, pools, and fountains. The fossil remains are clothed with eyes, sinews, and muscles, and they again walk and talk. The past becomes the living past, and we find in imagination there is no time or space. Through your imaginative faculty, you can be a companion of the most inspired writers of all time. I gave a lecture on the 21st chapter of Revelation some time ago in the Wilshire Ebel Theater in Los Angeles to our Sunday audience. The previous night, while I was meditating on the inner meaning of the following verses, I intuitively and actually felt the presence and the intimate companionship of the mystic seer who wrote the inspired verses. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them and be their God. Revelations 21:2-2. Can't you now walk down the court of your own mind and there see, inwardly perceive, feel, and sense God's river of peace flowing through your mind? You are now in the holy city, your own mind, inhabited by such lovely people as bliss, joy, faith, harmony, love, and goodwill. Your mind is clothed with God's radiant beauty, and your mood is exalted, noble, and godlike. You are married mentally and spiritually to God and to all things good. You have on your wedding garment, because you are in tune with the infinite, and God's eternal verities constantly impregnate your mind. In your imagination you sense and feel that you are the tabernacle of God, and that His Holy Spirit saturates and fills every part of your being. Your imagination now becomes seized with a divine frenzy. You become God-intoxicated, having received the divine antibody, the presence of God in the chamber of your heart. You can look at a rock, and out of that rock, through divine imagination, you can reveal a Madonna and portray a vision of beauty and joy forever. Never permit your imagination to be used negatively. Never distort or twist it. You can imagine sickness, accident, and loss and become a mental wreck. To imagine sickness and lack is to destroy your peace of mind, health, and happiness. On board ship one time, I heard a passenger exclaim when looking on the setting sun, I am so happy. I hope this lasts forever. How often have you seen a glorious sunrise? Perhaps you said, I hope this lasts forever. Nothing in this transitory world lasts eternally. However, the truth of God lasts forever. Darkness follows night, but morning will come again. Twilight will also come. You do not want things to stand still. You do not want to stand still either, for there are new worlds within and without to conquer. Change eternal is at the root of all life. You do not want to remain in a rut. Problems are life's way of asking you for an answer. The greatest joy and satisfaction is in overcoming. In conquering life would become unbearable and unendurable if we could not experience change. We would be bored by the monotony of things. You meet with night and day, cold and heat, ebb and flow, summer and winter, hope and despair, success and failure. You find yourself moving through opposites, through your power to imagine what you wish and to feel its reality subjectively is to reconcile the opposite and bring peace to your mind. In the midst of sorrow, grief, or the loss of a loved one, your imagination and faith, the two wings of the bird, take you aloft into the very bosom of God, your Father, where you find peace, solace, and divine rest for your soul. In your imagination you look into the very face or truth of God, and God wipes all tears, and there shall be no more crying. All the mist and fog of the human mind dissolves into the sunshine of God's love. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Behold, I make all things new. Revelations 4:5. When the night is black, you see no way out. That is, when your problem is most acute, let your imagination be your Savior. I will lift up mine eyes, or imagination, unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. The hills are of an inner range, the presence of God in you. When you seek guidance and inspiration, fix your eyes on the stars of God's truth, such as infinite intelligence leads and guides me, or divine wisdom floods my mind, and I am inspired from on high. There is a designer, an architect, and a weaver within you. It takes the fabric of your mind, your thoughts, feelings, and belief, and molds them into a pattern of life which brings you peace or discord, health or sickness. You can imagine a life which will take you up to the third heaven, where you will see unspeakable and unutterable things of God. Or through the distorted, morbid use of your imagination, you can sink to the depth of degradation. Man is the tabernacle of God, and no matter how low a man is sunk, the healing process is there waiting to minister to him. It is within us, waiting for us to call upon him. You can use your imagination in all business transactions in a wonderful way. Always imagine yourself in the other fellow's place. This tells you what to do. Imagine the others expressing all that you long to see him express. See him as he ought to be, not as he appears to be. Perhaps he is surly, sarcastic, bitter, hostile. There may be many frustrated hopes and tragedies lurking in his mind. Imagine whatsoever things are lovely and of good report, and through your imagination you have covered him with the garment of God. God's world of ideals and God's infinite ideas are within him waiting to be born and released. You can say, if you wish, God waits to be born in him. You can open the door and kindle the fire of God's love in the man's heart, and perhaps the spark you lit will burst into a divine flame. The greatest and richest galleries of the world are the galleries of the mind devoted to God's truth and beauty. Leonardo da Vinci, through his gift of imagination, meditated on Jesus and the 12 disciples and what they meant. Lost in deep reverie, his imagination secreted the perfect picture from the infinite reservoir within him, and due to his perfect focus, his inner eyes glowed with an interior luminosity, so that he was inspired, and out of his divine imagery came the masterpiece, The Last Supper. You have visited a quiet lake or a mountaintop. Notice how the placid, cool, calm surface reflected the heavenly lights. So does a quiet mind and a spiritual man reflect God's interior lights and wisdom. Picture your ideal in life. Live with this ideal. Let the ideal captivate your imagination. Let the ideal thrill you. You will move in the direction of the ideal which governs your mind. The ideals of life are like the dews of heaven, which move over in arid areas of man's mind, refreshing and invigorating them. The inspired writer's imagination was fired with truth when he wrote, "There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High." By now you know that imagination is the river enabling you to flow back psychologically to God. The streams and rivulets are your ideas and feelings, plus the emanation of love and goodwill that goes forth from you to all men everywhere. Man looks out into the world and he sees sickness, chaos, and man's inhumanity to man. The man with a disciplined imagination soars above all appearances, discord, sense evidence, and sees the sublime principle of harmony operating through, in, and behind all things. He knows through his divine imagery that there is an everlasting law of righteousness behind all things, an ever-abiding peace, a boundless love governing the entire cosmos. These truths surge through the heart and are born of the eternal truth, which through the imagination pierces the outer veil, and rests in the divine meaning of the way it is in God in heaven. Imagination was the workshop of God, who inspired the writer of the following matchless spiritual gems, which will go down throughout the corridor of time and live forever. For tender beauty and divine imagery, they are unsurpassed in dealing with the availability and imminence of God's presence. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. Psalm 91:11. Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning, and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall their hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. End of section. Chapter 2. Using the Subconscious Mind in Business. Long before our Bible was published, ancient wisdom said, "As man imagines and feels, so does he become." This ancient teaching is lost in the night of time. It is lost in antiquity. The Bible states, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Legend relates that many thousands of years ago, the Chinese sages gathered together under the leadership of a great sage to discuss the fact that vast legends of brutal invaders were pillaging and plundering the land. The question to be resolved was, how shall we preserve the ancient wisdom from the destruction of the invaders? There were many suggestions. Some thought that the ancient scrolls and symbols should be buried in the Himalayan mountains. Others suggested the wisdom be deposited in monasteries in Tibet. Still others pointed out that the sacred temples of India were the ideal places for the preservation of the wisdom of their God. The chief sage was silent during the entire discussion. In fact, he went to sleep in the midst of their talk and snored loudly, much to their dismay. He awakened in a little while and said, "Tao, God, gave me the answer, and is this: we will order the great pictorial artists of China, men gifted with divine imagination, which is the workshop of God, and tell them what we wish to accomplish. We will initiate them into the mysteries of truth. They will portray or depict in picture form the great truth which shall be preserved for all time and for countless generations yet unborn. When they are finished with the dramatization of the great truth, powers, qualities, and attributes of God through a series of picture cards, we will tell the world about a new game that has been originated. Men throughout the world for all time will use them as a game for chance, not knowing that through this simple device they are preserving the sacred teaching of all generation. This was the generation and origin of our own deck of cards. The ancient Chinese sages, according to the legend, added if all the sacred writings were destroyed, they could again be resurrected at any time through the symbolic teaching and inner meaning of the various designs on the playing cards. Imagination clothes all ideas and gives them form. These artists, through the divine artistry of imagination, clothed all these ideas with pictorial form. In the act of imagination, that which is hidden in your deeper self is made manifest. By imagination, what exists in latency or is asleep within you is given form in thought. We contemplate that which hitherto had been unrevealed. Let us take some simple examples. When you were going to be married, you had vivid, realistic pictures in your mind. With your power of imagination, you saw the minister or priest. You heard him pronounce the words. You saw the flowers, the church, and you heard the music. You imagined the ring on your finger, and you traveled through your imagination on your honeymoon to Niagara or Europe. All this was performed by your imagination. Likewise, before graduation, you had a beautiful, scenic drama taking place in your mind. You had clothed all your ideas about graduation in form. You imagined the professor or the president of the college giving you your diploma. You saw all the students dressed in gowns. You heard your mother, father, or your girlfriend congratulate you. You felt the embrace and the kiss. It was all real, dramatic, exciting, and wonderful. Images appeared freely in your mind as if from nowhere, but you know and must admit that there was and is an internal creator with power to mold all these forms which you saw in your mind, and endow them with life. These images said to you, "For you only we live." A young man said to me in the army before he was discharged, "I see my mother clearly. I can now imagine her welcome. I see the old home. Father is smoking a pipe. My sister is feeding the dogs. I can see every mark and corner of that home. I can even hear their voices." Where do all these vivid pictures come from? Keats said there is an ancestral wisdom in man, and we can, if we wish, drink of that old wine of heaven. The Spirit or God in you is the real basis of imagination. Once in an examination in London, I did not know the answer to an important question. I got still and quiet and said over and over again, slowly meditating in a relaxed voice, "God reveals the answer." In the meantime, I went on answering the other questions, which were easy. We know that when you relax the conscious mind, the subjective wisdom rises to the fore. In a short while, the picture of the answer came clearly into my mind. It was there in words like a page on a book, with the entire answer written out as a graph in my mind. A mightier wisdom than that of my conscious mind or intellect spoke through me. I had a very religious schoolboy, about 14 years old, come to me. Whenever he had a problem, he said to me that he would imagine Jesus was talking to him, giving him the answer to his problem, and telling him what to do. His mother was very ill. This boy was highly imaginative. He read the story of Jesus healing the woman with fever. My little friend related to me, "Last night I imagined Jesus saying to me, 'Go thy way, thy mother is made whole.'" He made that drama of the mind so real, vivid, and intense, that due to his faith and belief he convinced himself of the truth of what he heard subjectively. His mother was completely healed, yet she was considered at the time hopeless and beyond medical help. Being a student of the laws of mind, you know what happened. He galvanized himself into the feeling of being one with his image, and according to his faith or conviction was it done unto him. There is only one mind and one healing presence. As the boy changed his conviction about his mother and felt her perfect health, the idea of perfect health was resurrected in her mind simultaneously. He did not know anything about spiritual healing or the power of imagination. He operated the law unconsciously and believed in his own mind that Jesus was actually talking to him. Then, according to his belief, it was done unto him. To believe something is to accept that it is true. This is why Pericles said in the 16th century, Whether the object of your belief be true or false, you will get the same results. There is only one spiritual healing principle and one process of healing called faith. According to your faith, it is done unto you. There are many processes, methods, and techniques of healing, and all of them get results. Not because of the particular technique or method, but because of imagination and faith in the particular process. They are all tapping the one source of healing, which is God. The infinite healing presence permeates all things and is omnipresent. The voodoo doctor with his incarnation gets results. So does the kahuna of Hawaii with his ministrations. The various branches of New Thought, Christian Science, the Nancy School of Medicine, osteopathy, etc. get healings. All these schools of thought are meeting levels of consciousness and are doing good. Any method or process which alleviates human misery, pain, and distress is good. Many churches practice laying on the hands, others make novenas and visit shrines. All are benefited according to their mental acceptance or belief. When you are willing to stand alone with God and cease completely giving power to external things, when you no longer give power to the phenomenalistic world, which means to make a world of effect a cause, when all your allegiance is given to the spiritual power within you, realizing it is the only principle and the only cause, you will not need any props of any kind. The living intelligence which made your body will respond immediately to your faith and understanding, and you will have an instantaneous spiritual healing. If you are not at that level of consciousness where you can grow it to through prayer, the obvious thing to do is to go see a dentist, pray for him, and for a perfect divine oral adjustment. As long as you believe in external causes, you will seek external remedies. To illustrate further the power of imagination, I will tell you of a close relative of mine who had tuberculosis. His lungs were badly diseased. His son decided to heal his father. He came home to Perth, Western Australia, where his father lived, and said to him that he had met a monk who sold him a piece of the true cross, and that he gave him the equivalent of 500 for it. This young man had picked up a splinter of wood off the sidewalk, went to the jeweler's, and had it set in a ring so that it looked real. He told his father that many were healed just by touching the ring of the cross. He inflamed and fired his father's imagination to the point that the old gentleman snatched the ring from him, placed it over his chest, prayed silently, and went to sleep. In the morning he was healed. All the clinic's tests were negative. You know, of course, it was not the splinter of wood from the sidewalk that healed him. It was his imagination aroused to an intense desire. Plus the confident expectancy of a perfect imagination was joined to faith or subjective feeling, and the union of the two brought about the healing. The father never learned the trick that had been played upon him. If he had, he probably would have had a relapse. He remained completely cured and passed away 15 years later at the age of 89. I know a businessman here in Los Angeles has reached the top in his field. He told me for 30 years the most important decision he made were based on his imaginary conversation with Paul. I asked him to elaborate, and he remarked that few people in his business world realized the wonderful guidance and counsel that could be received by dramatizing in their imagination that they were receiving counsel from the writers or great seers of the Bible. I will quote this successful executive as accurate as I can. Many times my decisions might have prospered the company or plunged it into bankruptcy. I vacillated, wavered, got high blood pressure and heart disease. One day the idea came to me, why not ask Jesus or Paul? I loved the epistles of Paul, so when an important decision was to be made, I would imagine Paul was saying to me, "Your decision is perfect. It will bless your organization. Bless you, my son. Keep on God's path." After imagining I saw Paul and heard him, a wave of peace and inner tranquility would seize me. I was at peace about all decisions. This was this businessman's way of receiving divine guidance by using his imagination to convince himself that right action was his. There is only one principle of intelligence in the world. All that is really necessary is to say and to believe, God is guiding me now, and there is only right action in my life. The mind, as Troward tells you, works like a syllogism. If your premise is correct, the conclusion or result will correspond. The subjective reasons deductively only, and its sequence or conclusion is always in harmony with the premise. Establish the right premise in your mind, you will be subjectively compelled to right action. Inner movement of the mind is action. The external movements and action is the automatic response of the body to the internal motion of the mind. Hearing a friend or associate congratulate you on your wonderful decision will induce the movement of right action in your life. The man who used St. Paul to impregnate his mind with the belief of right action was using the one eternal principle of intelligence. his technique of arriving at that place in mind does not really matter. Goethe used his imagination wisely when confronted with difficulties and predicaments. His biographers pointed out that he was accustomed to fill many hours quietly holding imaginary conversations. It is well known that his custom was to imagine one of his friends before him in a chair answering in the right way. In other words, if he were concerned over problems, he imagined his friend was giving him the right or appropriate answer, accompanied with the usual gestures, tonal qualities of the voice, making the entire imaginary scene as real and vivid as possible. I was very well acquainted with a stockbroker in New York City who used to attend my classes at Steinway Hall there. His method of solving financial difficulties was very simple. He would have mental, imaginary conversations with a multimillionaire banker friend of his who used to congratulate him on his wise and sound judgment and compliment him on his purchase of the right stocks. He used to dramatize this imaginary conversation until he had psychologically fixed it as a form of belief in his mind. Mr. Nichols, Ouspensky's student, used to say, "Watch your inner talking and let it agree with your aim." The broker's inner talking or speech certainly agreed with his aim to make sound investments for himself and his clients. He told me his main purpose in his business life was to make money for others and to see them prosper financially by his wise counsel. It is quite obvious he was using the laws of mind constructively. Prayer is a habit. This broker regularly and at frequent intervals during the day returned to the mental image in his mind. He made it a deep subjective pattern. That which is embodied subjectively is objectively expressed. It is a sustained mental picture which is developed in the dark house of the mind. Run your mental movie often. Get into the habit of flashing it on the screen of your mind frequently. After a while it would become a definite habitual pattern. The inner movie which you have seen with your mind's eye shall be made manifest openly. He calleth things that be not as though they were, and the unseen become seen. Many people solve their dilemmas and problems by the play of their imagination, knowing that whatever they imagine and feel is true will and must come to pass. Some time ago, a certain young woman was involved in a complicated lawsuit which had persisted for 5 years. There was one postponement after another with no solution in sight. At my suggestion, she began to dramatize as vividly as possible, her lawyer having an animated discussion with her regarding the outcome. She would ask him questions, and he would answer her appropriately. Then she condensed the whole thing down to a simple phrase as suggested years ago by the French School of Mental Therapeutics. She had him repeat it over and over again to her. The phrase she said was, "There has been a perfect, harmonious solution. The whole case is settled outside court." She kept looking at the mental picture whenever she had a spare moment while in a restaurant for a cup of coffee. She ran the mental movie with gestures, voice, and sound equipment. She could imagine easily the sound of his voice, smile, and mannerism. She ran the movie so often it became a subjective pattern, a regular train track. It was written in her mind, or as the Bible said, it was written in her heart and inscribed in her inward parts. Her conclusion was, it is God in action, meaning all around harmony and peace. Harmony is of God, and what you want in a legal case is a harmonious solution. In the science of imagination, you must first of all begin to discipline your imagination and not let it run riot. Science insists upon purity. If you wish a chemically pure product, you must remove all traces of other substance, as well as extraneous material. You must, in other words, separate out and cast away all the dross. In the science of imagination, you eliminate all the mental impurities such as fear, worry, destructive inner talking, self-condemnation, and the mental union with other miscellaneous negatives. You must focus all your attention on your ideal and refuse to be swerved from your purpose or aim in life. As you get mentally absorbed in the reality of your ideal by loving and remaining faithful to it, you will see your desire take form in your world. In the book of Joshua it says, "Choose ye this day whom ye shall serve." Let your choice be, I am going to imagine whatsoever things are lovely and of good report. I know and have talked to many people who diabolically invert the use of their God-given faculty. The mother, that is, imagines something bad has happened to her son, John, because he is late coming home. She imagines an accident, a hospital, Johnny in the operating room, etc. A businessman whose affairs are prosperous yet dwells on the negativity is another example of the destructive use of imagination. He comes home from the office, runs a motion picture in his mind of failure, sees the shelves empty, imagines himself going into bankruptcy, an empty bank balance, and the business closed down. Yet all the time he is actually prospering. There is no truth whatsoever in that negative mental picture of his. It is a lie made out of a whole cloth. In other words, the things he fears does not exist, save in his morbid imagination. The failure will never come to pass, except he keeps up that morbid picture charged with the emotion of fear. If he constantly indulges in his mental picture, he will, of course, bring failure to pass. He had the choice of failure or success, but he chose failure. There are chronic worriers. They never seem to imagine anything good or lovely. They seem to know that always something bad or destructive is going to happen. They cannot tell you one reason why something good should and could not happen. However, they are ready with all the reasons why something dire and evil should occur. Why is this? The reason is simple. These people are habitually negative. That is, most of their thinking is of a negative, chaotic, destructive, morbid nature. As they continue to make a habit of these negative patterns of thought, they condition their subconscious mind negatively. Their imagination is governed by their dominant moods and feelings. This is why they imagine evil even about their loved ones. For example, if their son happens to be in the army, they imagine he is going to catch cold, become an alcoholic, become loose morally. Or if he is in combat, they imagine he will be shot, and all manner of destructive images enter their mind. This is due to the hypnotic spell of habit, and their prayers are rendered null and void. Make a choice now. Begin to think constructively and harmoniously. To think is to speak. Your thought is your word. Let your words be as a honeycomb, sweet to the ear and pleasant to the bones. Let your words be like apples of gold and pictures of silver. The future is the present grown up. It is your invisible word or thought made visible. Are your words sweet to your ear? What is your inner speech like at this moment? No one heard you. It is your own silent thought. Perhaps you are saying to yourself, I can't, it is impossible. Oh, I'm too old now. What chances have I? Mary can, but I can't. I have no money. I can't afford this or that. I've tried. It's no use. You can see your words are not as a honeycomb. They are not sweet to your ear. They do not lift you up or inspire you. Ouspensky was always stressing the importance of inner speech, inner conversation, or inner talking. It is really the way you feel inside, for the inside mirrors the outside. Is your inner speech pleasant to the bones? Does it exalt you, thrill you, and make you happy? Bones are symbolic of support and symmetry. Let your inner talk sustain and strengthen you. But the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. See, I have set before thee this day life and good, death and evil. Decree now and say it meaningly. From this moment forward I will admit to my mind for mental consumption only these ideas and thoughts which heal, bless, inspire, and strengthen me. Let your words from now on be as apples of gold and pictures of silver. An apple is a delicious fruit. Gold means power. Pictures of silver mean in the Bible your desires. The picture in your mind is the way you want things to be. It is the picture of your fulfilled desire. It could be a new position of health. Let your words, your inner silent thought and feeling coincide and agree with pictures of silver or your desire. Desire and feeling joined together in a mental marriage will become the answered prayer. Be sure to follow the imagination of the Bible and let your words be sweet to the ear. What are you giving your ear to now? What are you listening to? What are you giving attention to? Whatever you give attention to will grow, magnify, and multiply in your experience. Faith cometh by hearing, Paul said. Listen to the great truth of God. Listen to the voice of God. What language does he speak in? It is not Gaelic, French, Italian, but the universal language or mood of love, peace, joy, harmony, faith, confidence, and goodwill. Give your ear to these qualities and potencies of God. Mentally eat of these qualities, and as you continue to do so, you will be conditioned to these positive, enduring qualities, and the law of love will govern you. You have heard this often repeated quotation, man is made in the image and likeness of God. This means your mind is God's mind, as there is only one mind. Your spirit is God's spirit, and you create in exactly the same way, and through the same laws God creates. Your individual world, that is, experiences, conditions, circumstances, environments, as well as your physical health, financial state, social life, etc., is made out of your own mental images and after your own likeness. Like attracts like. Your world is a mirror reflecting back to you your inner world of thought, feeling, beliefs, and inner conversations. If you begin to imagine evil powers working against you, or that there is a jinx following you, or that other forces and people are working against you, there will be a response of your deeper mind to correspond with these negative pictures and fears in your mind. Therefore, you will begin to say that everything is against you, or that the stars are opposed to you, or you will blame karma, your past lives, or some demon. Truly, the only sin is ignorance. Pain is not a punishment, it is the consequence of the misuse of your inner power. Come back to the one truth and realize that there is only one spiritual power, and it functions through the thoughts and images of your mind. The problems, vexations, and strife are due to the fact that man has actually wandered away after false gods of fear and error. He must return to the center, the God presence within. Affirm now the sovereignty and authority of the spiritual power within you, the principle of all life. Claim divine guidance, strength, nourishment, and peace, and this power will respond accordingly. I will now proceed to point out how you may definitely and positively convey an idea or mental image to your subconscious mind. The conscious mind of man is personal and selective. It chooses, selects, weighs, analyzes, dissects, and investigates. It is capable of inductive and deductive reasoning. The subjective or subconscious mind is subject to the conscious mind. It might be called a servant of the conscious mind. The subconscious obeys the order of the conscious. Your conscious thought has power. The power you are acquainted with is thought. Back of your thought is mind, spirit, or God. Focus, directed thoughts reach subjective levels. They must be of a certain degree of intensity. Intensity is acquired by concentration. To concentrate is to come back to the center and contemplate the infinite power within you, which lies stretched in smiling repose. To concentrate quietly and properly, you still the wheels of your mind and enter into a quiet, relaxed mental state. When you concentrate, you gather your thoughts together and you focus all your attention on your ideal, aim, or objective. You are now at a focal or central point where you are giving all your attention and devotion to your mental image. The procedure of focused attention is somewhat similar to that of a magnifying glass, and the focus it makes on the rays of the sun. You can see the difference in the effect of scattered vibrations on the sun's heat and the vibrations which emanate from a central point. You can direct the rays of the magnifying glass so it will burn up a particular object upon which it is directed. Focused, steadied attention of your mental images gains a similar intensity, and a deep, lasting impression is made on the sensitive plate of the subconscious mind. You may have to repeat this drama of the mind many times before an impression is made, but the secret of impregnating the deeper mind is continuous or sustained imagination. When fear or worry comes to you during the day, you can always immediately gaze upon that lovely picture in your mind, realizing and knowing you have operated a definite psychological law which is now working for you in the dark house of your mind. As you do this, you are truly watering the seed and fertilizing it, thereby accelerating its growth. The conscious mind of man is the motor, the subconscious is the engine. You must start the motor and the engine will do the work. The conscious mind is the dynamo that awakens the power of the subconscious. The first step in conveying your clarified desire, idea, or image to the deeper mind is to relax, immobilize the attention, get still and quiet. This quiet, relaxed, peaceful attitude of mind prevents extraneous matter and false ideas from interfering with your mental absorption of your ideal. Furthermore, in the quiet, passive, receptive attitude of mind, effort is reduced to a minimum. In the second step, you begin to imagine the reality of that which you desire. For example, you may wish to sell a home. In private consultation with a real estate broker, I have told them of the way I sold my own house. They have applied it with remarkable results. I placed a sign in the garden in front of my home which read, "For sale by owner." The second day after placing the sign, I said to myself I was going to sleep, "Supposing you sold the house, what would you do?" I answered my own question, and I said I would take that sign down and throw it in the garage. In my imagination, I took hold of the sign, pulled it out from the ground, and threw it on my shoulders, went to the garage, threw it on the floor, saying jokingly to the sign, "I don't need you anymore." I felt the inner satisfaction of it all, realizing it was finished. The next day a man gave me a deposit of $1,000 and said, "Take your sign down. We will go into escrow now." Immediately I pulled the sign up and took it into the garage. The outer action confirmed to the inner. There is nothing new about this. As within, so without, meaning according to the image impressed on your subconscious mind, so it is on the objective screen of your life. This procedure or technique is older than our Bible. The outside mirrors the inside. External action follows internal action. I was engaged by a very large corporation to do some spiritual work for them. Through fraudulent means, others were trying to lay claim to their vast mining and other interest. They were harassing the company by legal trickery and trying to get something for nothing. I told the lawyer to dramatize vividly in his imagination several times daily the president of the company which he represented congratulating him on the perfect, harmonious solution. As he sustained the mental picture through continuous mental application, the subjective wisdom gave him some new ideas. As he said, right out of the blue, he followed these up when the case was closed soon afterwards. If a person has a mortgage due at the bank, and he does not have the money to cover it, and if he will faithfully apply this principle, the subconscious mind will provide him with the money. Never mind how, when, where, or through what source. The subjective mind has ways you know not of. Its ways are past finding out. It's one of the instruments or tools which God gave man, so he could provide himself with all things necessary for his welfare. The man who hasn't the money to meet the mortgage can imagine himself depositing a check or currency required in the bank, that is, giving it to the cashier. The important part is to become intensely interested in the mental picture or imagery act. Make it real and natural. The more earnestly he engages his mind on the imaginary drama, the more effectively will the imaginary act be deposited in the bank of the subconscious mind. You can take a trip to the teller's window in your imagination and make it so real and true that it will actually take place physically. There is a young lady who comes regularly to our Sunday morning lectures. She had to change buses 3 times. It took her 1.5 hours each Sunday to come to the lecture. In the sermon, I told how a young man prayed for a car and received one. She went home and experimented as follows. Here is her letter in part published by our permission. Dear Dr. Murphy, this is how I received a Cadillac. I wanted one to come to the lectures on Sunday and Tuesdays. In my imagination, I went through the identical process I would go through if I were actually driving a car. I went to the showroom and the salesman took me for a ride in one. I also drove it several blocks. I claimed the Cadillac car as my own over and over again. I kept the mental picture of getting into the car, driving it, feeling the upholstery consistently for over 2 weeks. Last Sunday I drove to your meeting in the Cadillac. My uncle in Inglewood passed away, left me his Cadillac and his entire estate. If you are saying now, I do not know of any way to get the money to pay off the mortgage, do not worry about it. To worry means to strangle. Realize there is a power inherent within you which can provide you with everything you need when you call upon it. You can decree now with feeling and conviction, my house is free from all debt, and wealth flows to me in avalanche of abundance. Do not question the manner in which the answer to your prayer will come. You will do the obvious things necessary, knowing that the subconscious intelligence is directing all your steps, for it knows everything necessary for the fulfillment of your desire. You can imagine also a letter from the mortgage company informing you that you are paid up. Rejoice in that image and live with the imaginary letter in your mind until it becomes a conviction. Become convinced now that there is a power within you capable of bringing what you imagine and feel as true into manifestation. Sitting idly by, daydreaming and imagining the things you would like to possess will not attract them to you. You must know and believe that you are operating in the law of mind. Become convinced of your God-given power to use your mind constructively to bring into manifestation the things you desire. Know what you want. The subconscious mind will carry out the idea because you have a definite, clear-cut concept of what you wish to possess. Imagine clearly the fulfillment of your desire. Then you are giving the subconscious something definite to act upon. The subconscious mind is the film upon which the picture is impressed. The subconscious develops the picture and sends it back to you in a material, objectified form. The camera is you consciously imagining the realization of your desire through focused attention. As you do this in a relaxed, happy mood, the picture is cast on the sensitive film of the subconscious mind. You need also a time exposure. It may be 2 or 3 minutes or longer depending on your temperament, feeling, and understanding. The important thing to remember is that it is not much the time as the quality of your consciousness, degree of feeling, or faith. Generally speaking, the more focused and absorbed your attention is, and the longer the time, the more perfect will be the answer to your prayer. Believe that you have received, and you shall receive, and whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing you shall. To believe is to accept something as true, or to live in the state of being it. As you sustain this mood, you shall experience the joy of an answered prayer. End of chapter. Chapter 3. How to Imagine Success. God is always successful in his undertaking. Man is equipped to succeed because God is within him. All his attributes, qualities, and potencies of God are within. You were born to win, to conquer, and overcome. The intelligence, wisdom, and power of God are within you, waiting to be released, enabling you to rise above all difficulty. There are many men who quietly use the abstract term success over and over many times a day until they reach a conviction that success is theirs. Remember that the idea of success contains all the essential elements of success. As man repeats the word success to himself with faith and conviction, his subconscious mind will accept it as true of himself, and he will be under subjective compulsion to succeed. We are compelled to express our subjective beliefs, impressions, and convictions. The ideal way to succeed is to know what you want to achieve. If you do not know your right place or what you would like to do, you can ask for guidance on the question. The deeper mind will respond. As a result, you will find a push or tendency in a certain field of activity. The deeper mind is responsive to your thought. The subconscious, sometimes called subjective or deeper mind, sets into operation its unconscious intelligence, which attracts to the individual the conditions necessary for success. Man should make it a special point to do the things he loves to do. When you are happy in your endeavor, you are truly a success. Accept the fact that you have an inner creative power. Let this be a positive conviction. This infinite power is responsive and reactive to your thought. To know, understand, and apply this principle causes doubt, fear, and worry to gradually disappear. If a man dwells on the thought, for example, of failure, the thought of failure attracts failure. The subconscious takes the thought of failure as his request and proceeds to make it manifest in his experience because he indulges in the mental practice of conceiving failure. The subconscious mind is impersonal and non-selective. A business friend of mine, a tailor by trade, has a favorite saying, "All I ever do is add, I never subtract." He means success is a plus sign. Add to your growth, wealth, power, knowledge, faith, and wisdom. Life is addition, death is subtraction. You add to your life by imagining whatsoever things are true, lovely, noble, and godlike. Imagine and feel yourself successful, and you must become successful. You are never a slave to circumstance, environment, or condition. You are master of conditions. You can become a victim of conditions by mentally acquiescing to things as they are. As you change your mind, you'll change conditions. A movie actor told me once that he had very little education, but he had a dream as a boy of becoming a successful movie actor. Out in the field mowing hay or driving the cows home, or even when milking them, he said, "I would constantly imagine I saw my name in big lights in a large theater." I kept this up for years until finally I ran away from home, got extra jobs in the motion picture field, and the day came when I saw my name in great big lights as I did when a boy. Then he added, "I know the power of sustained imagination to bring success." So what does success imply to you? You want undoubtedly to be successful in your relationship with others. You wish to be outstanding in your chosen work or profession. You wish to possess a beautiful home and all the money you need to live comfortably and happily. You want to be successful in your prayers and in your contact with the universal power within you. Imagine yourself doing the thing you long to do and possessing the things you long to possess. Become imaginative, mentally participate in the reality of the successful state. Enter into the state of consciousness frequently. Make a habit of it. Then you will find that you will be guided to do everything necessary for the realization of your dream. Go to sleep feeling successful every night and perfectly satisfied. You will succeed eventually in implanting the idea of success in your subconscious mind. I know a drug clerk who is a licensed pharmacist receiving $40 a week plus his commission on sales. After 25 years, he told me, "I will get a pension and retire." I said to him, "Why don't you own your own store? Get out of this place. Raise your sights. Have a dream for your children. Maybe your son wants to be a doctor. Your daughter desires to be a musician." His answer was that he had no money. He began to awaken to the fact that whatever he could conceive as true, he could give it a conception. The first step towards your goal is the birth of the idea in the mind, and the second step is the manifestation of the idea. He began to imagine he was in his own store. He participated in the act mentally. He arranged the bottles, dispensed prescriptions, imagined several clerks in a store waiting on customers. He visualized a big bank balance. Mentally, he worked in the imaginary store. Like a good actor, he played the role. Act as though I am, and I will be. This drugstore clerk put himself wholeheartedly into the act, living, moving, and acting in the assumption that the store was his. The sequel was very interesting. He was discharged from his position, went with a large chain store, became manager and district manager. He made enough money in 4 years to make a down payment on a drugstore of his own. He called it his dream pharmacy. It was, he said, exactly the store he saw in his imagination. He became successful in his chosen field and was happy doing what he loved to do. The individual who habitually maintains a mental attitude of faith and expectancy of the best is bound to succeed and advance in life. The individual who is depressed, dejected, morbid, and despondent attracts failure all along the line. Fear is truly a lack of faith in divine supply. It is faith misplaced. Fear is faith in the wrong thing. Fear is a belief in lack, or that man's good is being withheld from him. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I hath is mine. All things you need are in the invisible. It could be said that all things needed are in the abstract. You must desire to be greater than you are in order to advance in life. Desire comes first, followed by a recognition of the power within you, enabling you to manifest that which you want. The subconscious mind is the medium through which all that you desire can be brought into objectivity. You are the one giving orders in the form of habitual thinking, feeling, opinions, and beliefs. The subconscious mind obeys the orders given by the conscious mind. If your conscious mind is opposed to all negative thoughts, they can make no impression upon your subconscious mind. You become immunized. If, for example, you say, I wish I were healthy, then I could be much more successful in my work. Begin now to realize your body is your mind expressed. The subconscious mind is the builder of the body and controls all its vital functions. Your conscious mind has power to change any idea or group of thoughts held in the subconscious mind. You can impress the idea of health on your subconscious mind when you know it can be done. A conviction and sincere belief is necessary. Affirmative statements establish definite impressions on the subconscious mind. A wonderful way to impress the subconscious is through disciplined or scientific imagination. By illustration, if your knee is swollen and you are lame, imagine you are doing the things you would do were you in perfect health. You might say that I would go downtown on a bus or visit friends, ride horseback, go swimming or hiking. First, in your imagination, you go on these psychological journeys, making them as real and natural as possible. Continue to go on these psychological journeys. You know that self-motivation is yours. All movement is first of the mind or consciousness of man before any external movement can take place. By example, the chair does not move on itself. You must impart motion to it. The same is true of the body. As you continue to do all the things that you would do were you healed, this inner movement will cause the subconscious to build the body in accordance with the image back of it. The following is a wonderful prayer for perfect health. A minister I knew in South Africa applied this prayer and healed himself. Several times a day he would affirm slowly and quietly, first making certain he was completely relaxed mentally and physically. The perfection of God is now being expressed through me. The idea of health is now filling my subconscious mind. The image God has of me is a perfect image, and my subconscious mind recreates my body in perfect accordance to the perfect image held in the mind of God. This is a simple, easy way of conveying the idea of perfect health to your subconscious mind. You can develop confidence by knowing and realizing that nothing can prevent you from achieving success. Develop a certainty in your mind that this inner power can be called upon to overcome all obstacles. There must be an assurance and determination on your part that you can achieve and accomplish that you set out to do. This positive, affirmative attitude constitutes confidence. You have heard the biblical expression, according to your faith is it done unto you. Faith in God is the realization that there is only one spiritual power which is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, all love, all light, all beauty, all life, and an ever-present help in time of trouble. Know that His power responds to your thought. Cease looking upon God as some being living in the skies with a long beard. God is the essence of man. God is the life of man. We cannot comprehend all of God, for the finite mind cannot comprehend the infinite in toto. For example, your conscious and subconscious mind are projections of God. They are working tools. God is infinite wisdom, boundless love, infinite intelligence, absolute bliss, eternal harmony, and indescribable beauty. All these and others are qualities and attributes of God. You are not cast adrift on the ocean of life, deserted by the Creator of life. This presence and power is within you. This knowledge or awareness of divinity within you is the greatest and most powerful contributing factor to success. Develop your talents. Begin to use them. They are God-given. You have faculties and powers which require constant development. Man shall decree a thing, and it shall come to pass. What are you mentally decreeing now? What is the nature of your inner talking, inner conversations, and your idle moods? Man shall account for every idle word he speaks. The idle words are doubt, fear, anxiety, and worry. If these are present, you are not giving definite positive orders to your subconscious mind because there is no definite impression made as to what you wish to bring to pass. Fear and worry cause confusion in the conscious mind. This creates confusion in the subconscious mind, and nothing happens but confusion in man's affair. Continue to trust in the divine power, and that which you desire will come to you in some manner. Have faith in God, in the divine power, in His divine love, and His overshadowing presence always watching over you, and you will become invincible. Trust in the Lord and do good. So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. End of chapter. End of book. This audio presentation of Believe in Yourself by Joseph Murphy has been brought to you by AudioEnlightenment.com. Copyright 2014. All rights reserved. This audio presentation of The Wheels of Truth by Joseph Murphy has been brought to you by AudioEnlightenment.com. Copyright 2014. All rights reserved. Wheels of Truth. And he said unto them, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Forward. As the many facets of a diamond form an integral part of its sparkling whole, so the many chapters of a book take form and finally emerge in their effulgence of truth and wisdom. In Wheels of Truth, Joseph Murphy gives expression in a clear and lucid style to the fundamental principle of universal truth, that God is the first cause, and that to him the conception of time and space does not apply. Furthermore, that the universe is but an emanation of God, and the law, the intelligent purpose at the heart of things. It is not the skill and presentation alone which makes this book an ever-recurrent inspiration. Its contemplative content touches the heart of strings and plays upon them the melody of eternal hope, bringing ever nearer the ultimate path leading to peace and joy, of faith and accomplishment. This is the everlasting heritage. Wheels of Truth is indeed a sanctuary to which all may turn for guidance, for it is sanctuary built out of the treasure of the light of divine illumination. It opens wide the door to understanding. It embodies the law of life. Anne Mussman. Chapter 1. The Sphinx. Verse. As for the likeness of their faces, thy four had the face of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side. And thy four had the face of an ox on the left side, thy four also had the face of an eagle. Ezekiel 1:10. In order to manifest, there was an emanation from the Absolute into two streams of consciousness, called Father and Mother. The Mother is often referred to as the great sea of substance or light in which the Father reflected himself. The word mare or sea is sometimes called the Virgin Mary. The first step, therefore, in manifestation was the one being becoming both masculine and feminine. Man has a conscious male and the subconscious female mind, simply two phases of the one universal consciousness, specialized or individualized. It would seem confusing to refer to God as mind, except we clarify what we mean by mind. The subjective mind of man is the God in man. The conscious mind reasons, analyzes, and investigates. In other words, our conscious mind is constantly changing, and God changes not. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Consequently, that which changes cannot truly be termed God. To presuppose investigation of something is to deny the one being of omniscience and boundless intelligence. It is true, of course, that all is God. Nevertheless, we find it necessary for purpose of clarification to distinguish between the two phases of consciousness. Mentation or ideation is, therefore, no part of the function of the subjective mind of man. All things in the world were made by the self-contemplation of spirit, as there is only spirit. Spirit may be termed the highest degree of matter, and matter the lowest degree of spirit. To put it in more simple terms, all things in the world, such as all the elements, sun, star, sea, trees, ad infinitum, are simply different degrees of condensation of the light limitless. I am the light of the world. There is nothing but light, sometimes referred to by scientists as a sea of scintillating energy forever turning and twisting on itself. We look into space and it seems empty, but this radiant light or energy is forever turning, twirling, rotating on itself. The ancients referred to God as a circle, having neither beginning nor end. He is without face, form, or figure, boundless, timeless, spaceless, infinite, soundless, sometimes referred to as the silent one, motionless. He desires to express himself, and this results in motion or activity. Therefore, the original velocity or seat of perpetual motion flows from consciousness or God, and all other vibrations or motions in the universe are simply modifications of the one original motion. Let us look at this matter in a very simple way. God becomes man by conceiving himself to be man. The world not made, but begotten. The word begotten means acquired by being. Therefore, strictly speaking, nothing is made or created. It is simply God becoming all things he ideated in the incorporeal state. In the first chapter of Genesis, we read of the incorporeal man, or God, or Adam. All three mean the same thing, as there is only man, nothing but man, feeding himself to be all things: earth, herbs, grass, trees, fish of the sea, fowl of the air, seas, stars, suns, and moon, and yet nothing in particular desired to express or particularize himself. In the first chapter of Genesis is set forth the story of a man who was in paradise, a desireless state. Thou hast been in Eden, and the ruby was thy covering. And desiring to express himself, he ideated a world of sun, moon, stars, seas, continents, and all things contained therein. Those simply were ideas or archetypes, and were not objectified on the screen of space until after he became man, or limited by desires. Man is both conditioned and unconditioned. The unconditioned state is God, or the Absolute. The conditioned state is God defining himself as that man. Man is God limiting himself by conceiving himself as man. The timeless one is now conceiving in time. The boundless one now conceives boundaries and limitations. The spaceless one conceives in space. Man has forgotten the whole world in his, and he fights over 1/4 of an acre. In the second chapter of Genesis, man appears first, and all things mentioned in the first chapter follow. As they were only thoughts of man in the first place, the earth is here for man to walk on, and exists because man dreamt it into being. What is man that thou art mindful of him? God's mind is full of man. There is nothing but man, and all things are the extension of the one man. When man decides he no longer needs furs for his wife, all the fur-bearing animals will disappear. In the near future, all men will begin to eat synthetic meat. Consequently, all cattle, sheep, ad infinitum will gradually become extinct. The dinosaurs of old have disappeared. Their skeletons may be seen in the museums of the world. The reason for their disappearance is man no longer had any use for them. Moreover, he no longer had traits or characteristics resembling those ferocious animals. When the sly, cunning, deceptive states die out in man, the fox will disappear. This is true of all animals, as they are simply extensions in space of the moods of man. In the ancient Greek myth, the Sphinx propounded to all comers the riddle of man, and those who could not answer the riddle died. The riddle was, what walks on 4 legs, on 2 legs, and on 3 legs? The ancient answer was supposed to be man, because he crawls on hands and feet as a baby, walks erect on 2 feet until such a time as he uses the cane or a crutch to help him when he gets very old and feeble. This explanation is not the correct one. The inner meaning is as follows. Most of the human race is still walking on 4 legs, which means that we are worldly minded, catering to our passions and appetites, and have forgotten the laws of life and the way of the spirit. The 4-footed animal is the sensual man who lives to eat and enjoy the pleasure of the flesh. It also means the 5-sense man who walks the earth believing what he sees, and thinks his security rests in the accumulation of riches and things of the world. He is the type of man who has forgotten to lay up treasures in heaven by feasting on the mood of peace and happiness within, thereby establishing the kingdom of heaven on earth. Only a few are walking erect who have discarded the animal nature, but of those who have matured, who have become of age, only a very small minority walk the earth bearing all their weight on the crutch of intuition, or the Christ within. Come unto me, all ye that labor, and I will give you rest. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. The Sphinx is man's unconditioned consciousness, the unconditioned awareness within man. This is the center or sphinx around which all revolves. It remains unmoved while the wheel of personality ceaselessly turns beneath him. The Sphinx is the synthesis of the 4 animals of Ezekiel mentioned at the beginning of this chapter, which are both male and female, as was the Absolute before he emanated himself into Father and Mother for the purpose of manifestation. Within you, the reader, the universe came into being. Within you, the universe is established. Within you, the universe passes away. Man is dual. He is both God and man. God is unmodified consciousness or formless awareness. This unmodified consciousness now becomes modified by becoming man. Man himself is the projection of the beliefs embodied in his own consciousness, in the same manner as the wave of the ocean is a projection of the contents of the ocean, and the wave goes back to the deep from whence it came. Likewise, ultimately, man goes back to the great deep and becomes one with the all. When man awakens from the dream or illusion of separation, he will find it not robbery to do the works of God, though in the form of man. He will find he is God, the only being there is, and that he had been dreaming a non-eternal dream. The vision spoken of in the first chapter of Ezekiel, representing the 4 sacred animals and the wheel within wheels, is explained as follows. The dot Yod, Y-O-D, is the first circle. A point is dimensionless. This represents God, or unconditioned consciousness in man, the spaceless, formless awareness. The next circle is the creative world. The third circle is the formative world, and the 4th circle is the physical world as we see it. The 4 animals also represent the 4 letters in the name Jehovah, IHVH, the name by which all things are created. The first letter, Yod, Y-O-D, represents the eagle or Scorpio. The eagle is a bird which soars above the storm and tempest where skies are blue and clear. Moreover, the eagle looks directly into the sun and is not blinded. The eagle represents man's awareness of the fact that the seat of causation and omnipotence is within him. The next letter, He, H-E-H, is man's capacity to conceive his vision or ideal, symbolized by the lion. It represents man's desire. The third letter, Va, V-A-U, represents a nail or the cementing of a fixed state. This letter is represented by the angel or Aquarius. The latter means meditation or feasting on the reality of the state desired. It is actualizing the idea in consciousness. In other words, it is the feeling of being what you long to be, and the feeling of doing what you long to do. The final letter, He, H-E-H, symbolized by the bull, is the manifest state, or the objectification of that which was subjectively felt within. To sum it up, the 4 animals mentioned are the perfect formula for prayer. The practice of this method will cause you to realize the most cherished desire of your heart. First, you realize that your own consciousness is God Almighty, the seat of omnipotence, thereby giving complete recognition to the power within. The second step is your new conception of yourself, your desire or goal in life, or whatever you wish to be or do. The third step is the feeling which unites conscious desiring with the thing desired. The fourth step is the physical manifestation of that which was felt in the unseen or withinness of yourself. We can take a lesson from nature, the seed, the soil, the creative essence, result in the tree or plant or fruit as the case may be. Another example of the eternal trinity by which all things are created is hydrogen and oxygen, plus the electric spark uniting the two, and the resultant product water. These are 4 stages to the unfoldment of all ideas. Suppose, for instance, that your main desire in life is to be a great musician who will bring happiness to thousands or millions. Ask yourself this simple question: can I now feel the naturalness of being the great musician? Enter into the mood of joy of actually being the musician now. You can do this by shutting out all evidence of the senses and silently contemplating the reality of the state desired. As you meditate in this manner, you will find that the time comes when this state is fixed in consciousness, and all the necessary qualities and attributes will be resurrected as they were always within you in the first place. Everything we see around us is in a process of change. A constant flux pervades nature. The formed is constantly returning to the formless. Therefore, that which changes cannot be real, as God changes not. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. We see the illusion and believe it to be real, but in essence the latter is invisible. To see the real is to become one with it. We are here for no other purpose than to grow, and in the growing discover and awaken to the true self. All our thoughts should be circles or bands of love. They knew not that I healed them. I drew them with cords of a man with bands of love. In order to form this perfect circle, we must think in harmony with the One, the beautiful and the good. This is sometimes referred to as being in tune with the infinite. We are not compelled to love, but we have freedom to love. Love is spontaneous and joyous, and we have the ability to give or withhold it. There is no compulsion to love. However, there would be no joy unless we knew the opposite. How could you experience joy unless you had not known sorrow? If we are compelled to love, that would not be love, as love must be freely bestowed. Someone may feign love due to necessity or a sense of dependency, but this is not love. God expresses himself as life, love, beauty, order, symmetry, and proportion. When our thoughts are in tune with the infinite, they form a perfect circle or circuit and return to us, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. When our thoughts are negative, as when, for example, we indulge in criticism, cynicism, jealousy, or feeling sorry for ourselves or another, we are not in tune with the infinite. Consequently, there is no polarity. The circle of good is not formed. The dynamo is stopped. As students of truth, we must realize that every lack, limitation, or adverse circumstance is the result of negative moods entertained by us, which portray weakness in us. And as you know, weakness is simply absence of power. It comes from nowhere. It is nothing. The remedy is to realize that the seat of omnipotence is within you. And by quietly stilling the mind, we realize gently that all power and energy necessary to overcome any situation, be it what it may, are ours now. This is the silent inner knowing of the mystic who is humble before God and proud before man. We come out of meditation as a live wire charged with sufficient power to melt away all discord, dissolve all hate, and dry up all tears. Jesus goes from Galilee to Judea and from Judea to Galilee. This is simply the union of the consciousness and subconscious mind and feeling. The idea held in the conscious mind, Jesus, can be dropped into Judea, or subconscious mind, by feeling the reality of it. The subconscious mind gives form to the impression made on its way we know not. Thus is all manifestation. When our desire or ideal appears on the screen of space, this is the return of Jesus to Galilee. The latter means we are now consciously aware of the objectification of our desire. This journey on the map closely resembles a perfect circle, symbolizing simply the eternal wheel of the law. A battery is formed by connecting opposite poles of zinc and copper, causing a circuit which generates energy. This identical process is repeated when we meditate. Our thought must be charged with energy or emotionalized by love. In other words, we must become one with our ideal by feeling the reality of the state desired within ourselves. This is the polarization of thought, or the wheel within wheels. So we begin to pray scientifically and discover our power by touching the reality within. We go from glory to glory until finally we die to all the belief and limitations of the world and go back to paradise. Thus hast been in Eden, the garden of God, and the ruby was thy covering. We must learn to shut our ears to the confusion of the world which surrounds us, lest us open the inner hearing and aspire earnestly. He speaks to man, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth," that urge which sends us in search of him, in our search for the self within our true self, our Christ. Forever we are bound to the one. We are wheels within the one wheel, the motionless wheel. What is a day or a month or a year or a lifetime or 1,000 lifetimes? Time ceases for those who turn within to the wisdom, the power, and the glory. The quest will be forgotten when we have reached the goal. Deep within us is something that reminds us of our origin and urges us back to it. Our mission and purpose in this life is to cherish, enlarge, and glorify this memory, to follow sincerely the inner impulse until that spark grows by cultivation into a light and fills us, and we identify ourselves with it. We can begin now to become one with the all by practicing daily the perfect relationship between the conscious and the subconscious. We are told that Eve, the subconsciousness of man, was taken from the rib while he slept. This, of course, as everyone knows, is an allegory. The meaning is obviously as follows. It is during sleep that the subconscious emerges. She comes forth from his rib. The symbology of the ribs is protective, as the ribs protect the vital organs of the body. This merely portrays the protective nature of the subconscious. During sleep, Eve takes the office of instructor. The subconscious feeds the body. It carries on the internal process of which the conscious mind is wholly unaware. It is said that Eve was made subject to him for good or evil, or subconscious was perfect in the beginning, but we have defiled it, and in the same way that we have degraded and abused it, we can purify it by our thoughts and moods. Subservient was she to be to her husband all the days of her life. At night she talks back to man and takes charge, and according to his mood prior to falling asleep, either enjoys, if his thoughts are the good and the beautiful, or he has unpleasant experiences, particularly if he has gone to sleep in a turbulent mood. In this latter case, Eve is simply pointing out to him that he has mismanaged things. She also instructs and guides him and says what she pleases. Man must learn to have only the most exalted ideal and enthroned peace and happiness as his predominant mood, and by sustaining this state of consciousness, he will weed his garden, and then therein only lovely flowers will grow. Effectual prayer will change all the doubts, fears, and other negative states that may be lurking in the subconscious due to past errors and superstition. Man must become the perfect lover and give all attention and devotion to his subconsciousness instead of to his conscious mind. He must not get confused and mix them, but must learn to tell them apart. If we will still the mind and enter into the feeling of love and peace, forgiving all men by casting any burden of resentment on the Christ within, we are then free. In this meditative mood of peace and joy, we can incline our ear to Eve, and she will speak with an inner assurance. Or by what is known as the still small voice of intuition, she will tell us where to go, what to do, and will truly be a lamp unto our feet. She may warn us in a dream by showing us the end. For example, if you have fear of a disease, she may dramatize your mood by a dream showing you in a hospital attended by doctors and nurses. Now there is no such thing as an inexorable fate, and the dreams mentioned can easily be explained. The subconscious reason deductively only and deduces a conclusion from the fear of disease entertained by the individual, and she dramatizes this fear in a dream. Now man can change a dream and completely neutralize the fear by a counter-suggestion of perfect health given to the subconscious. He can either enter into a mood that perfect health is his now, and feel the joy of radiant health and peace, or in a meditative, relaxed mood, he can suggest with conviction one word, health, just prior to going to sleep, and keep on repeating it until he falls asleep. Unfathomed and unfathomable is the great deep of the interior being. In this no thing the eternal will of God arises, and when the no thing comes forth as something, this is the eternal wheel of the law. End of chapter. Chapter 2, Tuning In. Verse, I have glorified thee on the earth. I have finished the work which thou hast given me to do. And now, O Father, glorify thou me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was. John 17:4-5. Before the world was I am. Before Abraham was I am. When all things cease to be, I am. That they may all be as one as the Father art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us. John 17:21. Man has finished the work when he realizes that all men are within him. Man is like the line. It begins as a series of dots. The point is no dimension. The point becomes a line, our first dimension. The line bends. We now have two dimensions. The space or plane is not conscious of the line. The surface moves through space in a dimension not contained within itself and becomes a cube. This is our third dimension. The cube is not conscious of sides. Each side sees another as separate from itself. When the side becomes one with the cube, it no longer sees other sides, as the cube is only conscious of being a cube and not conscious of sides. God is not conscious of Catholics, Jews, Protestants, Buddhists. He only hears and sees in secret. Therefore, we know him only when we touch him in the silence through feeling. We must become conscious of being one with God. Then we will not and cannot see another. We are garments of the one being moving through the illusion of time and space. All stars, planets, suns, all things are extensions in space of the spaceless being or formless awareness within man. Therefore, if the primal essence of man is God, he is everywhere in mind, and there is no place he is not. This life, in the illusion of time and space based on sense belief, when we meditate on the truth, we will do away with all worldly values, all possessions. All these things will cease to have value. We give value to temporal objects pertaining to time as opposed to eternity because they seem to remain solid or fixed, such as our bank account, our jewelry, our homes. We believe our home will be there when we return to it and find our belief confirmed. In the future, when man develops the use of his mind, it is a scientific statement of fact that the great majority of mankind today does not use 1/10 of his mind capacity. He will be capable of collapsing time and space. Then, for example, a man living in New York can instantaneously be in San Francisco or any other part of the world. No means of conveyance will be necessary. Incredulous as this may seem, it has, through the ages, been accomplished by the adepts. Did not Jesus walk on the water and come through closed doors, translate his body at will, and appear to his disciples at will? He was not conditioned by time or space to the laws of gravitation. Man will change the atomic weights and structure of any substance. For example, he will be able instantaneously to change the atomic weight of a piano and cause it to go through the eye of a needle, and then cause it to assume its former shape. All things are possible to him that believeth. All things, not some things, glorify thou me. Man comes with the Absolute, and he goes back to the Absolute when he remembers who he is and dies to all beliefs and superstitions of the world. When someone dies, he lives on in you, the reader. That state of consciousness is within you. God dreamed himself to be man. Now we must awaken and go back to the glory which was ours before the world was. All the elements and minerals we speak of are modifications of light, simply congealed energy or extension of man's thoughts. We say certain races and tribes are savage, yet these primitive people can send telepathic messages without radio or wires. They bring rain at will. They melt snow with energy from the body. We believe hot water is the way to melt snow in front of our door. We don't believe. We like to believe. We want to believe, but we really don't believe. When we believe we can melt snow by heat from our body in the same manner that we can make a telephone call, then we will not feel it robbery to do the works of God. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. You, the reader, are the heart and the center of all mankind. You are the center of your world, and it revolves like a wheel around you. But you are the exact center of the wheel. As you think and feel, so will your world be. The greatest commandment is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. We must not divide the one and see elements, people, seas, and continents. We must not split the one. Remember it was said, What manner of man is this, whom the winds and the seas obey? All the storms and strife of the world are within man's consciousness. We must refrain from lighting candles. People believe the power is in the candle or ceremony or ritual. They do not realize it is all a matter of belief. There is only one man in the world. Therefore, there is no other to hurt, only thyself. All treatment is to oneself also. All love to oneself. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Thy neighbor is yourself. If you get a call from a friend and he's in trouble, you are not aware of that trouble until he brings it to your attention. So you go within and hear good news for him. If your finger hurts, it is a warning, and then can give it your attention. There is one subjective being, one God, and He is the Father of all, and the kingdom of heaven is within you. Therefore, if you impress a conviction in your consciousness, then that conviction must become objectified in the other. The other must change because you have changed your concept. If we begin to change our concept of people and things, then our world will change. When we really convince ourselves, instead of talking about it, that we are contained in God, and God and man are one, then we will feel it not robbery to do the works of God. He made Himself equal with God and found it not robbery to do the works of God. We must convince ourselves by sustained belief that we are of God and that nothing is impossible to us on that level of consciousness, and so condition ourselves that when we ask a thing we shall know. It is finished. Then we become as Isaac, blind to the evidence of the senses. We bless by touching and feeling the reality of the ideal sought. End of chapter. Chapter 3, Relaxation. Be still and know that I am God. We must realize that the cause underlying most failures to effectual prayer is muddled thinking and lack of emotional control. The important thing to observe is that we find the same law operative in the magnetic attraction of impulses of fear, jealousy, anger, and despair, which are responsible for most of the failures and frustrations in life, as we find in the ineffable emotion of love which results in good. A single principle, an identical force, lies underneath accomplishment or failure. Fear begets inescapable tribulation. It is the manifestation which alone differs according to the mood of the individual. All disease has its origin in emotional frustration. Man is the product of his emotions and moods. The tendency is to project blame on another for unfortunate circumstance, stressing heredity, environments, or lack of opportunity. This attitude of mind sometimes acts as a temporary hypodermic to bolster lagging morale, but it does not get rid of the cause of suffering and affliction. The world is a mirror reflecting our predominant mental attitude, and is constantly showing us ourselves. We do not always like what we see, neither do we take the initiative and proceed to change the picture. If we indulge in negative tendencies, we soon come face to face with conditions of a similar vibration. Like attracts like. This is the perfect working of the immutable law of cause and effect. We consistently deny that everything depends on cause, and with stupendous blindness seek to change the effect. A streak of jealousy aroused in us when inhabitually attract situations involving other jealous people, either in the home, in business, or in a social world. Quite often we hear people say that the one thing they dislike most is jealousy in others. If we watch their reactions, we find the fault is in themselves. What we think or feel finds its affinity in our external world and finds its likeness. The lesson to be learned is, we must take the beam out of our own eye by self-study and self-examination. Eventually we shall not discern even the mote in our brother's eye. When we see faults in others, let us look inside ourselves, for there we shall find, if we look with unbiased examination, them hidden in the corner of our own thoughts. Frustration and an inferiority complex are, as a rule, due to frustrated vanity. If we constantly fail and our efforts meet a stone wall, we must look within and see why. It may have the appearance of important circumstance. To effect a change of circumstance, there must be a change of consciousness, a consciousness dominated by the spirit of success. In order to succeed, we must have the confidence of success, erasing from the mind every discordant thought. It is our mood, the intensity of sustained faith, which impresses itself on the subjective mind. The barrier to success is when we allow our personal ego to draw a boundary around our consciousness. It is good also to ask ourselves if we are simply seeking recognition and applause for ourselves, or are we sincerely interested in what we are attempting for its own sake. Do we want only to feather our own nest, or do we want to serve humanity? Do we want to be an Emerson, a Lincoln who loved humanity, or do we seek self-aggrandizement and personal glory? Shall we give a lasting message of truth, or shall we condition it to crowds of people? If we have something to offer, it will be used except we stand in its way. Vacillation, wavering, and the so-called mercurial ups and downs result from a lack of an inner objective or ideal. Often a person says, "I am going around in circles." He hopes someone will come along eventually and show him the way. He lacks stability. and does not know if he would only become still and listen to the inner voice, it would speak to him and guide him. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. In the Scriptures, Genesis chapter 1 and 2, we are given both the formula and the mode for bringing to birth the living manifestation of our archetypal ideal. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, Let us make man in our own image, after our own likeness. Then the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Breathed into or inbreathed, if this breathing into can create one manifestation, it can by virtue of its power create another. Therefore we shall prescribe a rhythmic breathing exercise to overcome nervous tension and induce relaxation. At first, until it becomes natural, it is well to perform the exercise sitting erect or laying down on a flat surface. There can be no accomplishment where there is tension. Effortless effort is the maxim for all spiritual progress, which is the prerequisite of all earthly achievement. Exercise. 1. Your chest, neck, and head should be held in as straight a line as possible. 2. Then inhale through the nostrils, mentally counting 6 pulse throbs. 3. Hold breath during 3 counts. 4. Exhale through the nostril during 6 counts. 5. Hold lungs empty during 3 counts. And 6. Repeat as often as desired, as no slightest discomfort is felt. After a little practice, the rhythm will be perfectly established without necessity of mentally counting. When this is achieved, all tenseness and effort will disappear, and complete relaxation results. Later you can execute this exercise with perfect ease while walking, each step a rhythmic unit of count. However, in the beginning, especially for city dwellers where there is a continued interruption of traffic crossing and congestion, it is better to confine the exercise to the sitting or lying down position. In addition to the physical reaction of this rhythmic breathing, there is a spiritual response. With each inhalation, you may impregnate your subconscious with whatever suggestion you wish. It is important to remember that suggestions should be practiced simultaneously with the inbreathing. This chapter is written primarily for beginners and for those students who have not learned the fine art of relaxation and repose, which is akin to sleep. The latter is really a device intended to induce the auto-hypnotic state, which is most ideal for impressing the subconscious. For example, if you are gloomy or despondent, as you breathe in, orally or mentally say, "I am happy," and feel it, smile. This exercise may be repeated 24 or 100 times at one time, and repeated as often as you like. When we learn to breathe rhythmically, its effect on the nervous system is such that all tension is dissolved. All of us know that from a physiological standpoint, deep diaphragmatic breathing is very beneficial in promoting bodily well-being. The sensation of well-being, which always follows the drawing of a deep breath, favors the acceptance of any new suggestion. During these breathing exercises, we should visualize ourselves as we long to be, full of vigor and health. The regular rhythm of breathing brings about a stimulus analogous to the exerted by every rhythm, such as, for example, music or dance forms, which have a soothing, lulling influence. This rhythm tends to immobilize the attention and induce relaxation. Many students find the suggestive value of respiratory exercise a good boon. To cite a case, an elderly lady who suffered from asthma for years completely cured herself by the following exercise. She sat down quietly in her armchair and began to breathe slowly, and with each inhalation she would silently affirm, "I am all health." She would keep this up for 10 to 15 minutes, morning and evening, and sometimes at noon. In 2 weeks' time, she was completely cured. Man is a pulsating, rhythmic being. Our bodies are as much subject to rhythmic laws as is everything else in the universe. The ancients said, every atom in space dances to the rhythm of the gods. The universe, one verse, is simply one note or tone in God, but there is an infinite number of tones or rates of vibration within the one. Everything that we see is vibrating, and nothing is in an absolute rest in nature. Only God or the Sphinx is motionless. Nature is the birth or activity of God, the one manifesting himself in countless ways. The moment forms appear in the world, they begin to change, and from them appear other forms, and so on ad infinitum. Forms are simply appearances, they come and go, and likewise the body of man is constantly changing. There is almost a complete change in the chemistry of the body in a matter of minutes, so much that scarcely one atom or electron composing your body will be present a few months hence. All is vibration, and constant change pervades the universe. The beating of your heart follows a certain rhythm. So also does the ebb and flow of the tide. In breathing, therefore, it is important to get into the mental mood of rhythm, such as the counting employed in music. For the individual who finds it difficult to relax and immobilize his attention, it is well to isolate himself in a room where there will be no disturbance. It is important that you get into a rhythm until you feel the vibration throughout your whole body. Now look at a blue light, preferably a reading lamp with a blue bulb, 30 or 40 watt, placed about 10 inches from the eye. Look directly at the bulb. This is an auto-hypnotic influence and induces profound relaxation. When the eyes are tired, close them, but do not go to sleep. Maintain conscious control of your thoughts. There must be no sense of strain, as immobilization of the attention must be carried out with the minimum of voluntary effect. Form a clear mental outline of your ideal, of what you desire, and then feel the reality of it. There must be one pointedness of thought. Dwell on the fact that you now are the being you long to be, or that you have that which you long to have. Dwell on the thought with confident expectancy. After a week or 10 days, discontinue the use of the blue light, as it is only a physical adjunct, and we must not become slaves to physical prompts of any kind. We must begin to induce the happy, relaxed state by the mental image we have. Failure is due to lack of faith. The law never fails. End of chapter. Chapter 4. Dreamer Awaken. Religion means to turn back to the One. In other words, to the realization of the oneness of all things. There cannot be two religions for the same reason there cannot be two gods or two men. Man has made many creeds and through ignorance called it religion. There is only one man, and the whole world is within him. The true self or life of that man is God, the invisible, unmodified consciousness or formless awareness. Therefore, when man worships or prays, he really prays to the higher self within himself. The church is within, the choir is within, the congregation is within, the high priest is within, all is within. The church is his own consciousness, the choir is the joyous feeling held in meditation, the high priest is your I amness, which declares, I am that which I feel myself to be, I am that I am. The congregation are your ideas, thoughts, moods, and concepts about people and things. In other words, the congregation is your belief about yourself and others. The shrine of your God is truly ornamented when adorned with the righteousness of the believer. Your righteousness consists in seeing all men using the law righteously and growing perfectly. There is no more precious jewel than that of a noble life, and the highest altar of the Lord is that of the purified heart of man. Is our faith in the gilt-edged securities and stocks, impermanent and oft-times become valueless, or in the Christ within? By the constant application of the Golden Rule, we will become like Jesus, who by the transcending of his human wisdom became one with the soul urge of all mankind. He was in truth the substance of the great universal desire, the actual embodiment of the age-old quest for peace, wisdom, and illumination. Every day of our lives we must begin to meditate upon the beauty, the glory, the profundity of the Eternal One. Dwelling in the changeless One within ourselves, we find an ever-abiding peace which stretches out beyond the stars, beyond time and space. When we are imbued with lofty ideals, when we think universal thoughts, little things disappear, and all petty things of life become inconsequential or forgotten. Our soul actually becomes filled with the glory of the whole, and the limitations and restrictions of our daily life vanish. We find that this happy mood lifts us up and brings us in rapport with the universal mind of God. As greed, jealousy, discord, and other narrowing concepts which bind us to the wheel of pain disappear from our consciousness, forgotten in the joy of truth, we then become a citizen of free consciousness. We become one with the universal vistas. Constant meditation, either in the woods, in your home, or wherever you may be, causes your soul to thrill as though touched by a divine harmony, and a pulsating, throbbing feeling pervades every part of you. Many experience it as a tingling sensation in the spinal area, as if the melody of the gods were playing on the sacral plexus. In this profound, relaxed mood, men oftentimes realize that this planet we call the Earth becomes a dot in consciousness, and all things which seem so great and wonderful in the world become as insignificant as a fading planet itself. The wings of the Shekinah, with its shining glory and attached to each one of the wheels of thought within us, take us onward and upward. The cherubims are all around us. We are suffused by the golden flame of the 7 candlesticks before the throne. We float in this formless awareness beyond the stars until finally the flickering lights of the stars, sun, moons vanish in the eternity within ourselves. We find that the immensity of being is our true self. We have found the all. There is neither time nor space, now nor then, neither he nor she, only the ever-flowing reality flowing on forever. All things we once witnessed are now a forgotten dream. The dreamer has awakened, and for an infinitesimal moment partaken of a glimpse of reality. You have found there is nothing but you and the Sphinx, the unmoved mover of all. The inscrutable face of the Sphinx, the ageless one which changes not, is found to be in your true identity, the Christ within, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, and the Prince of Peace, the Ancient of Ancients. Blessed be he, the Ancient of Days. You now cease dreaming, but you continue contemplating the moment which lasts forever. You are the solid which reached its melting point and have melted into the boundless one. His thoughts are your thoughts. His heart is your heart. His dream is your dream. His contemplation is your contemplation. Then you know that you have finished the works which he gave it you to do. Now you sing the song of the Lamb, saying, Now, O Father, glorify thou me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was. Before the world was, I am. Before Abraham was, I am. When all things cease to be, I am. I am the only living reality, the timeless one within man. The lost word has been found. You have truly finished the work here when you have discovered who you are and returned to the glory of the Father. In the instant you become one with the all, you find you are the world and motion, gravitation, time and space are all within you. You know now that you are Alpha and Omega, that which was, is, and ever shall be. All things in space now revolve and dance as countless wheels within you, the eternal wheel of the law. You are the creator of heaven and earth, whose dream is creation. You are also the dream, and when the dreamer awakens, the creation disintegrates. When all things cease to be, I am. All the world is but an infinite dream of the infinite one. When we come out of this meditative phase, we find we have fallen. Remember, man, from whence thou hast fallen, and do the first works. Even though we have returned to time and space, we must forever keep our eyes upward. We find we are never the same again and will always remain in the world, but not of it. We will become Jesus the Christ, or God-man. We then say, I in thee, and thou in me, and I am glorified in thee. To us all men are simply aspects of ourselves, parts and members of the one body ourselves. I sanctify myself, that they also may be sanctified in the truth. All men will become the all and see the transcendent glory which was there before the world was. All imperfect parts will become perfect and one with reality in eternity. The resurrection comes as a sunrise and never sees night. It remains forever. For we are now one with our Father, and thus perfect. We have truly returned to the glory of the Father, to go no more out in rags and sackcloth. End of chapter. Chapter 5, The Man of Tomorrow. The motto of the Man of Tomorrow will be careful for nothing. This simply means that he will be indifferent to the failure of the law. It is a conditioning process. The law here referred to is the Lord God Jehovah. To put it simply, this means the law of God in manifestation, or the wisdom of God in operation. The man who becomes indifferent to the law is one who has perfect control of his subconscious and directs it wisely so that whatever he feels can be done is automatically put into effect. To such a man there is no failure because he believes that all things are possible to God. He knows the divinity that shapes our ends is the God in smiling repose within himself, the subjective mind. The man of tomorrow will immediately embody his desires by so disciplining the mind to acceptance that all his wishes will be immediately fulfilled. He will not use effort to lift tables, pianos, or to wash dishes. He will simply sit in an armchair, and in a partially subjective or passive state see all these things done. The man of tomorrow will not have to use a switch to turn on the light, as he knows all light is within himself. I am the light of the world. His own I amness contains all suns, planets, stars, moons. Therefore, at his will, all light emanates from him. It will be impossible for him to be sunburnt, as he controls all rays which are really within himself. Incidentally, no one is burnt by the sun. The burns come from within man due to his belief or fear of sunburn. Home, a Scotsman in 1843, used to go through windows, lift tables at random without touching them, and increase or diminish his height at will. This man, in the presence of the greatest scientists of the day, overcame the law of gravity by projecting himself through a window and flying through space without any mechanical aid, and then came in through another window. He also defied the most exacting scientific tests by proving to the scientists that he could cause scientific instruments, which were wired and solidly fixed in a special cabinet, to move freely about the room and be handled by many. There is no mystery about this. It simply means that in boyhood he was conditioned to believe that he was able to do this. The man of tomorrow will not use airplanes to travel. On the contrary, he will use no mechanical means, but will simply collapse time and space by going within himself and feeling that he is now where he wants to be. And when he opens his eyes, he will find himself there. If God is spaceless, where can we travel? Time and distance are but the illusions of the five senses. God is omnipresent. If so, he does not travel. God is timeless. Therefore, time is but an illusion. The man who prays scientifically and realizes his own consciousness to be God collapses time and space. Many men today believe that they can collapse time and space only in the astral body. Consequently, they can only do this according to your faith, be it done unto you. There is a case recently of a woman who asked a metaphysician to find out where her husband was. She had not heard from him in 6 months. This mystic went into meditation, visited him in London, and had dinner with him. The lady who was waiting in the outer room opened the door and saw this metaphysician in a trance. In a few minutes he came out and told her that her husband was returning by boat, giving the name of the boat and the date of arrival. When this lady's husband returned home, she told him about her experience with the man of prayer. He said, "Yes, a man appeared to me and asked me why I had not written to you, and several other questions. We ate together, and at the time I did not think this question strange, but when he disappeared, as we went through the door of the hotel, I thought the experience rather unusual." We must condition ourselves to collapse time and space bodily and not astrally. Some men believe they can travel astrally and be seen and transact business. Others believe that they can only transport themselves psychologically and not be seen, but can see what is going on elsewhere and come back and report. It is all belief, nothing but a conditioned state of consciousness. There is no space. We are living in the illusion of time and space. There are men in America today and other parts of the world who never use streetcars, trains, or other means of conveyance to go home. They simply realize in consciousness that they are where they wish to be. The man of tomorrow will not go from New York to London. He knows that London is within himself, so he brings there here. There-ness becomes here-ness. He will close his eyes and simply feel that he is in London that moment, doing the things he wants to do. He simply feels the naturalness of the state, and according to his faith, it is done unto him. Again, there is no mystery about this. We must begin to practice collapsing time and space now, today, and finally it will become a conviction, and our demonstrations will be instantaneous. The ancient mystics knew all about the law of mathematics, geometry, aerodynamics, engineering, but they saw no need for an airplane or train. The law of gravity is simply a belief of man, that is all. Therefore, these men, knowing the great laws of life as taught in the Bible, realized this simple fundamental truth, that all potentialities were within them, as God dwelt within them. Men may scoff at these things, but that's nothing new. People scoffed at the idea of radio, television, airplane, telegraphs. All these things were believed to be impossible by the so-called wise men of the world, who knew all, yet knew nothing. If we are truth students, we must surely realize that all things are possible to God. Therefore, what is strange or startling about a man being in New York one moment and Chicago the next? I mean bodily, in the real physical sense. Men who cannot read and write do this in the islands nearby this country. We must walk in the consciousness that it is impossible for our prayer to fail. Dream all things into being. Fix them as actual states of consciousness, and they will embody themselves. First, visualize. Second, actualize. Feel all things naturally. The whole is contained where you are now, as God dwells within you. The doctor of tomorrow will not prescribe pills, x-rays, diets, or any other medical treatment. He will assume the attitude of prayer and practice the law of substitution. He will not see a sick person. On the contrary, he will see the perfect man, radiant and expressing himself joyously. The doctor of tomorrow will hear the good news, as he will be the true mystic, tuning in with him who healeth all disease. There are some physicians who do this now. Homes, real estate, property, and money will have no value for the man of tomorrow. Those who have read the new metaphysical book called This Is It may recall the young man who could talk to his brother thousands of miles away without the aid of any mechanical device. There are many similar incidents related at the present time. The human ear is capable of apprehending a small band of sound waves. A dog can hear certain sounds that man is incapable of hearing. The voice of a husband overseas, for example, creates a sound wave. These waves go around the world and never stop. We can hear from any part of the world on the radio. Yet the man on the radio speaks in a normal tone of voice. The reason we hear him is that we and the radio announcer are equipped with sensitive apparatus for sending and receiving sound. A loving husband and wife are equipped with a greater instrument, the love of God or love of oneness. The husband's thoughts and feelings are transmitted to his wife, and her feelings go toward him. The waves of sound bridge the gap. Some wives in this country hear the voices of their husbands as plainly if they were 1 foot away, yet their husbands are in the South Pacific or Europe. If the loved ones at home practiced consciously and systematically the art of listening for the voice, they would converse freely and as easily as they were together, in fact, more articulately. The man of tomorrow will not use radio, television, telegraph, or any instrument. All those would be obsolete. He will use only his mind. Telepathy has been proven more accurate, for example, than radio messages. Read Thoughts Through Space, written by Sir Hubert Wilkins and Harold Sherman. We spoke of real estate losing its value. Yes, the businessman will leave his office in New York and instantaneously be in Venice, California, or Italy. He will not need that summer home or that air-cooled automobile or that yacht in the ocean. What can you give that man of tomorrow? He will have all things. You can't sell him sunshine. He commands the winds and the waves. If you want money for something, he will put up his hands in the air and give you some coins. All things are in the air. Mentally, he will mine the air and precipitate what you ask. Nothing is made, nothing becomes, all is, and all is God. The man of tomorrow will not be a cynic, the so-called wise man. He will be the humble man who believes, I believe, Lord, help thou mine unbelief. The man of tomorrow will also be able to project his vision to any part of the world, and to see the person to whom he wishes to talk. He will not have to resort to television for this. He that hath made the ear, can he not hear? He that hath made the eye, can he not see? When we turn within to our own consciousness, which is God, we are at the seat of causation, seat of all power. Consequently, we don't have to pay any attention to what medical science or any science says about our limited capacity to see and to hear. For this simple reason, he that sees all and hears all is within us. Believest thou this? Clairaudience and clairvoyance are well known today, and the true scientist acknowledges them to be true. Man's thought constitute a veritable universe. A man and a woman in love with each other will grow into a single harmony. If we love God by tuning in and claiming his attributes, we will grow into his likeness, and then will not feel it robbery to do the works of God. Man is God walking the earth, but man has forgotten it. We really tune in with our higher self when we tune in with God. The man who sings the song of the Lamb, I am Christ, is the man of tomorrow. The doors may be shut and the windows barred, but the man of tomorrow will appear in the midst of the assemblage in the flesh. He will walk on the water and appear and reappear at will. These occurrences will be so common that people will no longer say, what manner of this is this whom the winds and the seas obey? The man of tomorrow will be spirit-like. The sun will not burn him. The weather may be 30 degrees below zero, and he will not feel the cold. Thunderbolts might split the skyscrapers. The rivers may rise and flood the valleys, and he will not be afraid. He will mount the clouds. He will ride the sun and moon, and ramble at ease beyond the 4 seas. He knows no death, and has no thought of pain or gain. End of chapter. Chapter 6, Children of Light. All man-made laws have penalties attached to them. God made all things and pronounced them good. The law of God is truth. A law, in the usual sense, presupposes 2 parties and an agreement, but these are all man-made. If man throws a stone in the air and it falls to the earth, this is a law or truth and contains no reward or punishment. If you permit the stone to fall upon you, it simply means that you fail to get out of the way. It is utterly false to say that God makes laws which man disobeys. Man believes a lie, and the disease and misery that follows are based on his belief in the lie. We have made a law unto ourselves and are now bound by the chains of our own false beliefs. The laws of nature are not different or separated from the laws of man's inner life. None of the forces of the universe exist outside of man. The innermost reality in man is the one identity, within which the whole world moves, lives, and has its being. The center of this great wheel is always at rest. It is the Sphinx, or the formless awareness in man which remains unmoved throughout all the cycles of transformation. Ye shall delight in the Sabbath. The Sabbath is our conviction, the rest of the Lord, the stillness which follows the inner knowing that our prayer is answered. We must not hear anything but good. When you hear a person criticize another, you are actually hearing him tell you who he is. You do not have to check on his references. He has completely revealed his character to you, and character is destiny. All the things he criticized were within himself. At a truth lecture, members of the audience frequently say, "I am exceedingly glad I brought my husband or wife, or the case may be, tonight, for what you said certainly applied to him or her." The listener never thinks that what is said applies to himself, or that he is in any way to blame. We believe that if we lose an article that costs $5, we have lost something of value, because we are constantly thinking in terms of dollars and cents. But when we lose a joyful state, which is the greatest loss we can sustain, we don't mind that, because we seem to expect the sad, gloomy state and look upon it as inevitable. The writer is frequently asked to say grace at meals, particularly when invited to homes or sometimes by truth students. Go thy way and eat thy food with joy. The only real thanks is a joyful state. It is the great digester and assimilator. It is the silent inner knowing that there is abundance of God's bounty. Mechanical repetition of some fancy prayer is meaningless and distasteful, and gives rise to indigestion in some instances. If you are in a joyful mood, the natural secretions will play their role to perfection, and that food that you ate will be completely digested. If you believe the food is bad, or if you are in a dejected, critical, or angry mood, the food will become a lump in the esophagus and stomach. The gastric juices will dry up. This can be proven readily under hypnosis. If you are worried, it makes no difference what you eat. The result is always ulcers or the stomach or duodenum. Become relaxed and happy, and you are cured. The ulcers vanish, as they never really were. The ulcers existed because you continued to believe a lie in the opinions of man. Disease is what follows a belief. Some pray to entities in space for a cure, others take pills, others pray to a God outside themselves, wondering whether they are worthy. Praying is a hit-or-miss proposition to most people. They don't know whether their prayer is answered or will be answered. It is true that if a person believes in a pill, a cure will follow. It is the belief that cures, not the pill. A belief is one thing, and truth is another. The children of this day are in their generation wiser than the children of light. Matthew 16:8. And I say unto you, make to yourself friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when ye fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitation. Luke 16:9. This means that it is better for a man to believe in something rather than not have faith in anything. For the children of this day are those who have worldly beliefs, such as a superstition that a rabbit's foot will protect them from all harm while driving. If man believes this implicitly, so long as he has the rabbit's foot, he will be immune to harm. Of course, the stupidity and falsity of this belief are manifest to the truth student who knows that when the rabbit's foot is lost or stolen, the owner's God is lost and misfortune follows. However, such a man, though he may believe that if he lights a candle or several candles, someone will be healed, is wiser than the children of light, meaning a person who has heard and acknowledged truth, but fails to apply it is no wiser than he was before. Unfortunately, there are thousands of these children of light who can pass an examination in metaphysics and get 100% or at least 99%, and at the same time can't demonstrate over a toothache. They never apply it, they just talk about it and around it. Therefore, the man who believes in the power of talismans, amulets, candles, spiritual entities walking in space with healing in their wings is wiser and better off than these children of light. We must become men of light and let our light shine before men, that they may see our good works and glorify our Father who is in heaven. The food that we eat must be spiritual, the bread from heaven which is the living truth. This gives us health and happiness. When we sit down to eat, let us believe that what we are eating is good for us. If we are eating under protest, it will do us harm. If we drink a cocktail to please our hostess, and we feel it is bad for us, it will work harm. It is not what we would like to believe, but what we really believe that matters. Some people like to tilt tables while they eat and to produce sounds at will in different parts of the table. This procedure is due to a certain state of consciousness and not due to spirits. It is due to a law of disassociation. It is this peculiar passive state where you begin to write on the Ouija board, while waiting for it in the attitude of expectancy. Man and no one else operates the Ouija board. There are no discarnate entities and persons practicing automatic writing. Ouija board readings and mediumship operations are usually living in fear of evil entities in space. Consequently, this fear and negative state result in a split personality or so-called schizophrenia. The above is bad food, and the Scripture points out, "Thou shalt not eat any abominable food." We must take our ideas, which are facts of consciousness, and secrete the emotions necessary to assimilate wonderful food. This is the happy, joyous mood, and if we go to sleep in that state, the desert will blossom as a rose. End of chapter. Chapter 7. The Voice in the Wilderness. Verse, "And he confessed and denied not, but confessed, I am not the Christ." John 1:20. "I baptize with water, but there standeth one among you, whom ye know not. He it is, who coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoes latchet I am not worthy to unloose." John 1:26-27. Jonah or John is not the Christ, but gives birth to the Christ. Every man, after calling the 12 disciples to discipleship, becomes Jesus the Christ, or the God-man, here and now, or Jesus with his 12 disciplined faculties, signifying 13, or the sacred number of God. Christ is unmodified consciousness as in all men, and when all false beliefs are distilled from man, the pure essence, or Christ, comes forth. This distillation or purification comes after the complete disciplining of each of our 12 faculties. We must be incapable of seeing anything but the good. We must perceive divine perfection everywhere and in every man. We must give beauty for ashes and oil of joy for mourning. Truth is an inward perception. Therefore, by constantly turning our eyes inwardly toward the real and feeling the song of triumph within, we call the first disciple, Andrew, to discipleship. We call hearing, or Peter, to discipleship by hearing only the good tidings, the gospel or good spell. This is an inner hearing, the disciplined hearing of the mystic who hears only the voice of God or good, and cannot hear anything other than the truth about any person. By constant application, by daily meditation and prayer, we call forth the Christ or true self of man and reveal man as God. He confessed and denied not. Denial, which is to appropriate the feeling of being what we long to be. No negative statements are used. The baptism of John symbolizes this process. "And they asked him, What then? Art thou Elias? And he saith, I am not. Art thou that prophet? And he answered, No." That prophet is Jesus, or our conviction or feeling of being free. If we thrill to this feeling, it is essentially a prophecy. Elias means the same as Elijah. God is my Father. We must discover the law of consciousness before we can come out of a state of limitation. Elijah must come. Jonah or John goes a step higher than Elijah, which simply means that a man discovering his own consciousness to be God acts on that assumption and begins to change his world. Many are in the Elijah state. They intelligently affirm that God is within, but do nothing about it. He said, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord. This is the innate principle in all men forever seeking light and expression. It is God seeking to come forth in givingness and livingness. The eternal urge in man is to give life, love, and beauty to the world. The moment he ceases to do this, he dies. He crumbles up in disease and mental decay. It is our instinctive desire to give beauty, order, and symmetry to the world. God is the circle, and he is the center everywhere with no circumference. We form a perfect circle when we send forth thoughts of life, love, and beauty to all around us. Then beauty and love come back to us multiplied 100-fold. The libido's impulse flowing through us all is not just a biological sex impulse, but is the complete comprehension of God, which is givingness or pure desire. God is pure desire. The wilderness is our state of frustration due to our willingness to share our gifts with the world. We must give, and give all that can give a gift of love in consciousness, which is the greatest of all gifts. If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. If now in the silence you raise your consciousness or ascend into the hill of God and see people, conditions, and things as they ought to be, and feel the joy of the answered prayer you have given better than you know, to the world and to your fellow man. Material giving always follows, never precedes the gift in consciousness. Make straight the way of the Lord simply means the state that is come in desire. We clear the way for it by removing all obstacles such as doubt, fear, and idle thought. I baptize with water. Water will assume the shape of any vessel into which it is poured. Water, therefore, means unconditioned consciousness, which is all things to all men. When we use the I am, we condition consciousness by believing. Think emotionalized thoughts. I am sick, I am old, I am tired, and these emotionalized ideas become fixed states. They are poured into a vessel and assume its shape. Water is a cleansing agent. We cleanse or purge consciousness from sin, from a mistake or limitation by assuming a new mood or cultivating a new idea in our mind and thrilling to it. It finally becomes a conviction within us. The reader, therefore, will see that when the book of John, which is pure mysticism, says, I am not the Christ, it means John, the conscious mind, is not the Christ, whose shoes, latchet, I am not worthy to unloose. The conscious mind is not creative. The subjective mind is all wisdom, all power, all intelligence, and omnipresent. We must therefore still the conscious mind and dwell in a secret place of the Most High in pure consciousness. When all our sense perceptions, such as seeing, hearing, feeling, are turned inward to the real, and we feel and sing the song of triumph, we are in prayer or in tune with the infinite. If we have a problem, it is the effect of a cause we ourselves have set in motion. We must surely know that God has no problem. God is peace, love, and infinite intelligence. All that we have to do when confused is to leave the world of noise, together with the problems, and listen to the voice of the Holy One of Israel, God. In this stillness, the mind is lifted to a higher level of consciousness where all earthly quantities cease. It is then that liberation is achieved. Intuition, which is the all-knowing of God, flows through the problem, and there is no problem. We must realize that God is not confused. He does not know the problem. He knows only the answer. We therefore rise to the point of recognition of the correct answer. As an analogy, mathematics, of or by itself, does not know problems or errors. It knows only the answer. Mathematics cannot possibly know error. We are living in a cosmos, not a chaos. Everything in the cosmos is orderly. Man creates disorder. Therefore, as we meditate or pray, we must forever keep our eyes steadfastly on God, or our good, knowing that God is the answer and not the problem. In the great drama of life, God is the only actor. He is not only the actor, he is also the scribe and the script. Man is God's radiation, an extension of the limitless one, playing for a little while the billions of parts we call personal lives. When the particular role is ended, the garment no longer needed disintegrates, and the spirit which gave it life returns to its source. For are we not told, nothing is lost in all my holy mount? When man dies, his spirit lives on in all men. It never dies. It carries on until the end of the cosmic day, until all are reabsorbed into the one. The perfect man is not born yet, but when one man sees him face to face, no one can imagine what a cataclysm will take place. Instantaneously all men will awaken from the dream of being men, because there is only one man, and all men in the world are merely extensions in space of that one man. However, all men being within each of us, it follows that when one fully awakens, all awaken, that they may all be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one with us, and the glory which thou gavest I have given them, that they may be one, even as we are one. John 17:21-22. I in them, and thou in me, that they may be made perfect in one. John 17:23. Esoterically, this means that when we identify ourselves with the light, we become the light and flow again with the light limitless. No man can see the face of the Father and live simply means that when the perfect man awakens, he becomes one with the Father, or one with the all. The particular now becomes the universal. Then all men become perfect simultaneously. The scroll is rolled up, and man dreams a new dream. Because there is only man, let us stop fooling ourselves and trying to make many out of the one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. The wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but cannot tell whence it came, and whither it goeth, so every one that is born of the Spirit. John 3:8. One may go east, another west, but it is a fixed psychological state that counts, the set of the sail. It is the mood that you adopt. It comes from nowhere, from the invisible to the visible. Those that thou gavest me I have kept, and none of them is lost, but the son of perdition. John 17:12. All words, beliefs, impressions, and suggestions are being fulfilled, and nothing is lost but the sense of loss, perdition. If Joseph and Anne are climbing the mountain, and Anne says to John, I want snow, and Joe wants sunshine, doth not all things exist simultaneously in the absolute? All things exist in God. He contains all things. Therefore, though their hands be joined together as they climb the mountain, if they reach high enough in spiritual awareness, each will be conscious of snow and sunshine, separately, according to his will. Psychologists have proven that when a man is hypnotized and it is suggested to him that a blizzard is blowing, even though it may be 100 degrees in the shade, he sees snow and feels cold, for it is all belief. Canst thou believe? All things are possible to him that believeth. We often hear the trite saying, what about material laws? The only material laws that were given birth by you, the reader, and exist as long as you believe them. Though you now believe in the laws of motion, some do not, and are therefore not subject to the same law. Jesus said, I come to make the blind see, and those that see blind, meaning all things exist now, but we refuse to believe it. Canst thou believe that you, your consciousness, are God, walking the earth, and when you think and act from the absolute consciousness level? Consciousness, or God, ever creates in its image and likeness, on microcosmic as well as macrocosmic scales. The created is always relative to the Creator consciousness. End of chapter. Chapter 8. Sleep, the Sabbath. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. Proverbs 6:22. In sleep we are united with our Father every night. We become one with the Ancient of Days. Prior to falling asleep, students of the mysteries must learn to behold the scintillating white light that shines forever on the great white throne, which is the secret place of the Most High, or the Holy of Holies within man. We can imagine that we see this white light, and this will completely still the mind. Nothing can appear on this white screen without our permission. Now we are first in the pool. No man can get into this pool of silence but our I am, which is first person and present tense. But while I am, cometh another step down toward me, John 5:7. That which steps down before you are the idle thoughts such as fear, doubt, despair, self-pity, and similar moods. If you banish these evil spirits or moods, Jesus, your own I amness, will speak softly and say, Rise, take up thy bed and walk. Then the healing comes. Meditating on the eternal verities and the inner glory and beauties of the deity, man feels a movement within him. This is a divine light, and it is visible as a golden yellow light. Words cannot always define and formulate the things behind the veil. There are, of course, many mystical experiences which we cannot express with words, the ecstasy of heavenly bliss, of love and happiness. Meditation is that inner communion which works like a thief in the night, silently in man's own soul. This mood cannot be expressed in words or language, as it is beyond all formulation into word symbolism. To enter into the silence is intercommunion with the self or Christ within. This is the nearest approach to the invisible. To receive inspirational Bible passages, the following procedure will be found very helpful. Begin to imagine and dwell on the fact that in the deep of yourself sits the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and the Prince of Peace, whose dress is white. So also is the appearance of the light of his face. Imagine his being sitting upon a throne of scintillating light, that he may give light to you. Realize now that your intellect is being anointed by the Christ or truth. You will find your spine tingles and your forehead becomes moist. This is the dew from heaven. My head is filled with dew. Elohim shall give thee of the dew of heaven. Many good people think that sleep is intended for rest of the body, an inertia of mind and body. It is believed that a restorative process sets in, resulting in a feeling of well-being due to the fact that there is a restoration of physical energy. The reason we go to sleep is to develop spiritually and for no other purpose. Therefore, it is of paramount importance that we avoid all discordant states prior to sleep. The divinity that shapes our end is all-wise and has so arranged it that man is compelled to withdraw from the world of noise which is not conducive to spiritual unfoldment. Man is divinely guided in sleep. Answers to many problems are given him in the sleep state. Formulas, inventive devices, poems, contents for many volumes are also given in this dream state. The contents of many chapters in chemical textbooks and in engineering laboratories of the world appeared in a dream, an answer to the request of the dreamer. Sleep, therefore, does not mean rest for the physical body in the sense of inactivity, mental or otherwise. On the contrary, sleep protects one from the confusion, chaos, and distraction of the objective sense world. Paul said, I die daily. Sleep is akin to death, the only difference being that in the so-called sleep of death we sleep a little longer. There is no absence in the one presence, therefore we cannot go outside ourselves, and all experiences take place in our own consciousness. Suppose, for example, you want to invent or discover something, and you have no precedent to go by, no textbook reference. You may have a vague idea of what you want to invent or discover, and that is all. The technique is simple. Learn all you can about it objectively, and then in a passive state, dwell on a mental picture of that which you wish to invent. Then turn your mental picture over to your subconscious mind and go to sleep. When you awaken, be sure and follow the hunches you receive. It sometimes comes as an inner feeling that the solution lies in a certain direction or in a certain group of facts. You will find that many times the entire formula or solution may appear in a dream. In such a case, it is wise to have a pencil near you as you sleep, so that when you awaken you may jot down the impressions that come to you in your dreams. Some say, I never dream. We all dream, and if you don't remember your dreams, simply suggest to your subconscious before you drop off to sleep one word: remember. It knows what you want to remember and will faithfully follow your instructions. As we all know, the subconscious never sleeps. If you are a writer, teacher, doctor, housewife, or stenographer, you can utilize this great truth to your advantage night after night. Give your subconscious the right mental picture to go to work on each night, knowing it will reproduce your request in exact accordance with your desire. The book of Genesis says that God rested the seventh day. Some good people reading the Bible literally seem to think that God was fatigued or needed rest after 6 days of work. Such a conception, of course, is unthinkable and absurd. And God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because that in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. This quotation has nothing whatever to do with physical repose or rest. The Sabbath may be any hour or moment of the day or night. It means the supreme satisfaction that follows prayer, an inner knowing that what you prayed for is an established fact in your own consciousness, and as within, so without. Therefore, in calmness and in peace you await the external evidence of the inner experience. We have 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 2 eyes, and 7th a mouth, though this, as Plato says, mortal things have their entrance, immortal their exit. All the food we eat is consumed into tissue, bone, muscle. Finally the body disintegrates and returns to the elements. But in the silence, communion with God, when the 7 faculties are stilled, the still small voice of the undying God speaks through the lips. This may be voice of intuition, the voice having healing in its vibration, or it may be the 4th dimensional feeling of, it is finished. This is the rest or Sabbath of the Lord. End of chapter. Chapter 9. The Temple Not Made with Hands. Verse, And King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. He was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, and a worker in brass. He was filled with wisdom and understanding to work all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon and wrought all his works. 1 Kings 7:13 and 14. In the center of man is forever burning the eternal flame of God. This center is the Holy of Holies, in which abides the Absolute. The buildings adjacent to King Solomon's temples are your environment, family life, companionship, friends, in fact, every department of your life, business, and social. There must be no taint in any of them. Purity of purpose, integrity of action, self-mastery of thought, and emotion, generic virtue, all these are the fundamental basis for the erection of the temple not made with hands. This is man's participation and liberation. Thus can he seek entrance into the Holy of Holies. This is accomplished by following the advice of the prophets of old. Whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. In other words, we must practice the presence of God everywhere and at all times. Practicing the presence of God symbolizes the vast treasure of gold and precious stones necessary in the construction of Solomon's temple, which is yourself. The truth of being is that the whole wide world and all things contained therein are the self-expression of God. Man, not understanding this greatest of truth, forms false beliefs about the truth. He sees limitations of all kind around him. He feels himself to be separate from God and dependent on his own efforts. Let us realize that God is doing all things through us. If another person seems to behave badly, to the capacity of your thinking and feeling that God is working through him, will his conduct change? However, why should we dwell upon and magnify the seeming faults of others? Everyone has godlike qualities if we would only look for them. Seek and ye shall find. If you look for what is good, you will find it. For your own peace and happiness, if for no other higher purpose, an effort should be made to seek out the good qualities in others. It is told that when Thales was asked what was the most difficult thing to do, and what was the easiest, he answered, "The hardest thing to do is to learn to know thyself, the easiest to find fault with the things of other people." If you are at any time endowed with God's grace to heal, realize that God is healing his person through me. This is building the temple of God, for you, the reader, are the temple of the living God. And he set up the pillars in the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar, and called the name thereof Jachin. And he set up the left pillar, and called the name thereof Boaz. Jachin is infinite personality, or the presence of God in each of us. He is personal to each of us. The other pillar is the law of cause and effect. As you sow, so shall you reap, which is impersonal. It may also be called love. These two form the entrance to King Solomon's temple, in which is the secret place of the Most High within each of us. God abides in the silence. Truth is transmitted in the silence. The truth is lived in the silence. Hiram, who builds the temple, is man who is now aware of the fact that his consciousness is God. It stood upon 12 oxen, there looking toward the north, and 3 looking toward the west, and 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking towards the east, and the sea was set above them, and all their hinder parts were inward. 1 Kings 7:25. Oxen are emasculated bulls, which simply means that before we can finish the temple and awaken from the illusion of suffering, evil, and chaos to the reality of love, compassion, and wisdom, we must discipline our faculties. Otherwise, like the bull, we will run wild, and our senses will become our master instead of our servant. Some men live to eat, drink, and satisfy the passions and appetites. Such a man is referred to in the Bible as the snake that crawls on its belly, eating earth. Therefore, seek permanent values wherein is found the only reality of a divine plan. The 3 oxen looking toward the north are Andrew, Peter, and James, which symbolize perception, hearing, and right judgment. The 3 looking toward the west are John, Philip, and Bartholomew, symbolizing love, emotion, and the disciplined imagination of man. The 3 looking toward the south are Thomas, Matthew, and James, which denote turning their attention from the negative conditions and accepting desire and ability to pierce the veil. The 3 looking toward the east are Thaddeus, Simon of Canaan, and Judas, who portray man in prayer, whereby he turns within and sings a song of triumph with the praise of God forever on his lips. He abides in a mystic feast of joy, peace, and happiness, and then he rests. The rest is Judas, or a complete detachment from all that would deny is good, the good of himself or another. When we finally have disciplined Judas or the quality of dying daily to all false belief, there will no longer be a necessity for disciplining the other faculties, as Judas is the greatest of all disciples when disciplined. It means that we die to everything but the power of God, and we simply live in the presence of God all the time. This is calling Judas to discipleship. Then do we reveal Jesus our Savior. Therefore, Judas must betray or reveal Jesus, who is our own consciousness, our Savior. He that dips with me in the dish, he it is that will betray me. He now touches reality in the depths of himself by appropriating a new state of consciousness, and dies to all former concepts of himself. He is dipped with Christ in the loving state of consciousness, or the universal dish called the subjective, or God in smiling repose. Jesus feeds Judas. Judas appropriates the sop. Before this, Judas was always considered poor. Now Jesus has fed him with the knowledge of the Savior, and the Judas state has been changed to Jesus, our ideal state. And all their hinder parts were inward. 1 Kings 7:25. This means that in prayer we withdraw our faculties from the world of sense and turn inward toward the real, the one, the beautiful, and the good. In other words, we deny that which we see in the world of sound and go back to the silence. God abides in the silence. The Masonic legend states that Hiram was murdered by 3 ruffians before the temple was completed and dedicated. The 3 ruffians are our ignorance of the truth, our race beliefs, superstition, and fear. These 3 ruffians are in all of us and constantly slay the Christ principle. The truth student and mystic, of course, realize that this means we go through 3 degrees or steps every time we die to an old belief. These 3 degrees are recognition that Hiram is the seat of causation. Second, the new ideal or purified desire. And third, the feeling or conviction of now being the person you desire to be. This is the only crucifixion, change of consciousness there is. The story of the crucifixion is a mystical drama, and seen through the eyes of the mystic is one of the most beautiful stories ever told. Good Friday should be every day for the student of the truth. Good Friday is now dedicated by the Christian churches to sorrow and sadness. When man understands its true meaning, it should be and will be a day of joy, celebration, and happiness. The reason is perfectly obvious. We rejoice in the good. We now have told the truth. The Jews did not slay Jesus, the Savior. How could they? He is always with us. He is our Savior and salvation. He abides in the heart of every man. Our Savior is slain only by man when he does not in consciousness recognize and sustain faith in the realization of his desires. This Savior is our own consciousness. It was never born and will never die. As we change our consciousness, we die to our old state and are reborn in the new state. The Christ principle in man never dies. Water wets it not, fire burns it not. Wind blows it not, therefore, why grievest thou for it? Jesus has many meanings. It means to save. It also means desire. That is, your desires, when accepted by you, save you. Jesus also means your consciousness, the liberator, the emancipator, or liberated self. In order for you to realize your desire, it must die or be stilled. You still it this way, by entering into the mood of acceptance of your desire. Contemplate the joy that would be yours if you had your ideal now, and feel it until it becomes a conviction. There must be no break in your sustained faith. Then follows the rest or Sabbath of the Lord. You know and now have the inner knowing that tells all those who pray aright that it is finished. Man does not seek that which he has. Your former state is slain, and a new Jesus, a saving state of consciousness, is resurrected. I am the resurrection and life. This is the true meaning of the resurrection scripture story. It is high time that Christians painted a true picture of Jesus to the world. If we do that, all will want to emulate the glorious picture of the true Jesus, who depicted the Christ, or awakened man, or anointed state of consciousness. Man will become as Jesus, the Christ, the kindliest man that ever walked the earth, the noble, dignified man who loves humanity, who has compassion on the multitude and feeds them, the ideal man who walks on the waters, who translates his body at will, who says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The praise of God will be forever on his lips. Jesus always said, I thank thee, Father, that thou hearest me. He it is who wore the seamless robe of consciousness, who ate only the best, the man who could read the thoughts of others and forgive and heal them. The man who never condemned anyone, but said, "Forgive till 70 times 7. The man who said to the thief, "This day shalt thou be with me in paradise." The man who knew nothing about laws of gravitation and motion, but could be where he wanted to be at will. The man who could go through the eye of a needle and revibrate himself again. The man who could go through bared walls, doors, and windows. The man who awakened from the dream of being man and ascended into the clouds to the glory, which was his before the world was, the I Am state. Therefore, the ultimate mystical meaning of the crucifixion of Jesus is simply the psychological transformation and transmutation of consciousness, whereby man awakens to his godhood here and now and no longer asks for light, but realizes, "I am the light of the world." He then becomes the radiance of the light limitless, and his eyes are now God's eyes. His forgiveness is now the forgiveness of the Absolute, the only one, the absolute love of all mankind, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When in books, in pulpits, and in classrooms we dramatize the Bible, the true story of Jesus the Christ, we will begin to change the consciousness of the nation and the world. We consciously become God's radiation, dissolving the barrier between man and man. We must now paint the true picture of Jesus the Christ, and not the hideous picture painted for 2,000 years of a man of sorrows, bleeding on the cross with a crown of thorns. It is a small wonder that no boy wants to be Jesus the Christ, the victim. No, he would rather be a soldier or an aviator or a maker of an atomic bomb so that he may drop bombs of destruction on a seeming enemy. Science without Christ consciousness, wisdom of God, means the destruction of mankind. If we paint the true picture, every boy will want to be Jesus the victor. He will want to emulate the perfect ideal. Now we have carved a model of perfection, which is good and beautiful. The basic pattern of the world is beauty, and the particulars are suspended from the universal like roses hanging from a vine. It behooves all of us to let Hiram build a temple. This represents a state of spiritual, intellectual, and worldly emancipation. We must cease sacrificing the beautiful for what we consider the riches of the world. Let us begin now to change a superstition and discard into an ingot of spiritual gold. Meditating on these great truths, we will surely build Solomon's temple here and now, which is your mind, body, and affairs. We have been searching for the lost word, not knowing, not realizing that when discovered it would be in our own manger, surrounded by the animals and marked by a blazing star or a burning bush. This blazing star is the sun, or our own spiritual consciousness called I Am. I Am is the lost word. Now, having found it, we can heal the blind, cure the sick, and raise the dead. End of chapter. Chapter 10. The Temple Completed. The scripture says Hiram of Tyre was a widow's son. This means one who is anointed with the wisdom of God, one who has the know-how or understanding to apply universal principles. Hiram Abif means our father Hiram. Hiram really means I Am, or our consciousness, which is the father of all. Everything in our world is an outpicturing of a state of consciousness within ourselves. When we change our consciousness, the outer picture must change too. It takes 7 years to complete the temple. This means you must die daily to present precepts and keep on forever expanding your consciousness. Every thought of negation must die within you, and you must live only in the Christ truth or wisdom of God. The power to succeed is latent within everyone. There is a rest after every creative process. This is referred to as the 7 years, and as we continue creating and generating greater values in life, we go from glory to glory. And there was neither hammer, nor axe, nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building. 1 Kings 6:7. We create only in the silence. We must learn the effortless way of life, which is to be still and know that I am God. If we accept all our desires and consciousness by actually feeling the reality of the wish fulfilled, the objective manifestation of each desire will appear on the screen of space without our devising ways and means. Universal principles always set in motion methods of attainment. As we continue conditioning ourselves by daily rejecting all false race beliefs, such as a necessity to work for a living, the time will ultimately come when the man of tomorrow will only think and the thought will be precipitated before the eyes. This will include food, home, real castles in the air, money, and everything tangible or concrete. This world should be the playground for man, as well as a school of learning wherein he paints the glories of God in statues, in stone, on canvas and flesh, speech, writing, and music. His first real work here is to meditate on the mysteries of life. These are the everlasting values. To the degree that we understand life, to the degree can the universe be the playground in which we truly enjoy life. We are meant to be happy. All wish for perfect peace and happiness. We cannot hope for more, nor need we pray for less. Our happiness depends on ourselves and not on others. We must learn to condition the weather at will and have any season of the year any time. All these things must be done without sound of hammer or voice of workman. King Solomon's temple means that each man is the king in his own right. Solomon is consciousness, or Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Consciousness, idea, and the feeling of being it. Therefore, each man is king or master of his ideas, feelings, and actions, and he can build the house not made with hands, only in the silence, forever tuning in with the infinite. 3 men supervise the building of this temple. They are Solomon, which is God or consciousness; Hiram of Tyre, which is your conscious mind, God-like ideas and concepts; and Hiram Abiff, your subconscious mind. There is no mystery about this. The simplest way of stating it is the Father or unconditioned consciousness generates the seed or idea. The feeling nature of man, or the receptive attitude of mind, receives the idea through feeling. What is impressed must be expressed. The thousands of workmen employed in the building are ideas, moods, beliefs, and opinions about people and things. The master over the workmen are the predominant moods in which we dwell. Moods are creative. Consequently, we must watch our moods wisely, for they may become enemies within our household. Every man is the reflection of the mood he entertains. The whole motion of the cosmos is toward truth. It is the Creator moving through space, dramatizing himself for the joy of self-expression. Every man is that being, but he doesn't believe it. The holy place of man is his conscious mind, where he contemplates ideas, and the most holy of holies is his subconscious or subjective mind, the womb of God, Isis, the goddess of 10,000 appellations, Eve, the mother of all living, that which is all things to all men, called the harlot in the mysteries. It is through our feeling nature that we consecrate ourselves to God. Man must walk the earth in silence, contemplating eternal verities. Then he walks on the water. He is by the shore of reality, and all who come in its presence will say audibly or silently, "There goes a holy man." At that moment, all who see him will think of God and be blessed, because they felt the presence of God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The cedars of Lebanon are used in the construction of the temple of the living God. These represent wisdom and understanding and wealth. The cedars are the cross of Christ. The perpendicular beam is I am, or consciousness. Our fixed psychological belief is the horizontal, or that which crossed it. There is no other cross. There never was, and there never will be. Man is the cross, and there is only man. The cross is God conceiving himself to be man. Let us for our own good now die on the cross, and let the sword pierce our side, and we will be resurrected as new beings. We will become illuminated and transformed from the Jesus state to the Christos plane of God being. Blood and water came out of his side. Blood and water do not fall from a dead man. This is a great truth and must be interpreted mystically in no other way. Blood and water flow at birth. Therefore it symbolizes the birth of the Christ consciousness. As this awareness expands, we say, "Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be his angels." The angels and the saints are the divine ideas that we are radiating. It is the subtle aura of love toward all men. The extension of ourselves as operating centers of consciousness. We realize all men are saints or holy, because they are the channels through which the Holy One of Israel walks and talks. We also say aloud, "Blessed be the name of Mary, Virgin of Mothers." We now have purified Mary, or the subjective, by true prayer, and dispelled all false beliefs and superstitions. Now we bring forth the Blessed One, the beloved Son of God, the Christ consciousness. Our world is heaven, and we abide in it. In conclusion, let us contemplate this profound truth. Beloved, Now are we the sons of God, and it doth not appear what we shall be. But we know that, when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. 1 John 3:2. End of chapter, end of book. This audio presentation of Joseph Murphy's Wheels of Truth has been brought to you by AudioEnlightenment.com, copyright 2014, all rights reserved.